In a preliminary study, users reported decreased anxiety and more connection to their future after a brief interaction.
Recapping the top story this hour, the ANC says it has met with at least 6 political parties with a view of forming coalition governments or a government of national unity at national and provincial levels. Headlines at 3:30 for SFM News. I'm Dinamo Taung.
Coming up in your sports this hour, Garda resigns as minister after corruption charge. Bruce reiterates the target in the World Cup qualifiers and 6-time MotoGP champion Marquez to ride for Ducati from 2025. More details at 3:30.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, this is the National Pulse, so welcome to the show. And let me ask you this question right away again. What moves the National Pulse today? Because every single day, different issues moves the National Pulse. And sometimes it's an overlapping issue. Whatever it is, I'd like to hear from you. You can call in 086 000 2032, WhatsApp, voice notes, or in text form 0614 104 107. And as well, you can give us a thumbs up, high, shout out on social media, just on SFM Radio, on the X or Twitter platform, as well as on Facebook. Great that you're part of this journey. Right, let's get to that's my point. So now we know, right? Not a single party was able to convince South Africa's voters to give them a 50% plus majority to govern. That's despite more than one party, I can tell you, confidently predicting they will walk this election. In fact, more than one opposition party spoke of their leader as the president, right? What the parties do have is a mandate to work together, a mandate from us, the people, right? It's a responsibility given, in particular to the leading parties, the ANC, the DA, the MK party, and the EFF. But for now, we are swimming in rather treacherous waters of coalition season, a period where parties must carry out the people's will to work together, or else. The big discussion right now is not national unity, or how do we all swim to shore safely. It is about self-preservation. What is right for the party? I tend to get that sense across the different parties. What is right for the party? Too much talk of the ANC will die, the DA will die, the EFF will die, the IFP will die. Not enough talk of how can South Africa live and survive and endure. And then we have the new fast-riding MK party considering a boycott of the first sitting of Parliament. Now, clearly I'm not a politician, but I do want the parties, all the parties, to unite with a common purpose. To thresh out a deal that is right for South Africa, that is best for South Africa. MPs must understand, when they are all inducted into Parliament as MPs under the South African flag, they take that oath that is to serve South Africa and the Constitution, right? Under the South African flag and not that of any political party. It is as it should be. South Africa first, not South Africa second. I'm Ashraf Garda, and that's my point. Now, what's yours?
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, let's get your thoughts on the points I've raised in the That's My Point feature, or on any other big stories, the big moving stories of the day. And certainly there's nothing bigger than the story you've just heard, that the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Minister Zizi Kodwa, has resigned. That's after being charged for corruption. Not found guilty, just charged for the day. Kodwa and his co-accused Jihan McKay appeared in the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court in Palm Ridge this morning, facing corruption charges involving around 1.7 million rands. Now, I understand that his resignation is certainly not an admission of guilt. But what does this really mean in terms of his future and the implications of the ANC and the ministry, of course, right? Tobani Zikalala is with me, who's an independent political analyst. Tulani, welcome to the National Pulse. Hi.
Ashraf, good afternoon. Good afternoon to SFM listeners.
Thank you. Firstly, did his resignation, we know he was going to be charged, did his resignation surprise you?
It's not surprising. I mean, it should be expected, but also it has become not what politicians do in this country. Politicians will wait it out, will want the party to instruct them to do these things. But we have seen since the introduction of the so-called step aside, that it's almost a fall to position that these politicians fall to try and salvage whatever reputation remains of the party and of themselves, because they want to come across as people who are trying to save the party from public scrutiny, also save and also salvage a little bit of reputation and dignity that they still hold after being corruption accused.
Okay, now, I mean, let the case run its course, so that's another issue. But he had an option to, either just stay as he is as the Minister of Sport, or to do an ANC thing, which is a fairly new thing, which is to step aside, which is not resigning, right? Why do you think he didn't do that?
I think, of course, another thing is that what is the implication, Ashraf? I mean, the implication of not resigning or not resigning, I mean, the current government is going to dissolve very soon. I mean, it's whether you stay on or you don't stay on, you are not going to be minister. So in terms of political impact, there's not much real big political impact in staying in a government that's going to that has run its course, because people of South Africa have voted for a new representation, and that representation must come in as soon as possible. So you are almost having a resignation that even if it didn't come, that person was going to lose their position very soon. I do not think that there is much to worry about in terms of resignation, on whether that resignation is good or bad. It's what to be expected. For me, there's much more to think about, especially because why now? I mean, you have many corruption accused or corruption allegations in the ANC, and we don't want to do a why Zizigota type of thing, but of course Zizigota may have been one of those who are corruption accused, state capture accused, who will have thought that they will find favor and cover if in the new dispensation of the leadership of the ANC and the country. And of course the issue of the nexus between the law, politics and economic interest in that space also, you will hope that if you almost in one way or another change factions or change sides, you will find cover. Because remember, Ashraf, one of the things that have emerged in the corruption crusade of South Africa is this idea that the anti-corruption tool, anti-corruption mantle, can be used as a political weapon to deal with political opponents. Of course, people like Zizigota, who maybe before the new dispensation, the new dawn or in the ANC, were on the other side, right? They would have thought that if they change sides, they will be covered, because there are many like them, corruption accused, who seems to have not been charged. So those are all the other nitty-gritties of this that needs to be really examined, to say, why now? Why Zizigota? I mean, we've seen Mapisa Ngagula, we're now seeing Zizigota. And we know, I mean, Ashraf, you have been doing journalism for so long. We know that in the African National Congress in particular, and in government, there are many corruption allegations and corruption accusations, right? And we always ask ourselves, why is this person not being charged? So we must be surprised when they charge someone on why they are charging them and why they are charging them as this.
Well, I mean, here's the thought, right? I mean, so I think, and we've discussed this before a few weeks back, that I think the NPA and its position now gathering steam, and they're doing their work. So you're finding, it's not a coincidence, but there's like one on top of the other. And the next question would be who's next, which we'll get to in a moment, right? But it still leaves me to the point, as you said, considering he may only have a week left as the Minister of Sport, because there's so many changes politically, right? Do you think it is wise for him to resign? I mean, should he not have just, fizzled out very quietly? That's assuming that he was not going to be asked to be the Minister of Sport in the 7th administration.
I think. Remember, politicians are in the game of access to state administration. That's the game they are in. So you have a situation where this person, the corruption accused Zizigota, must, in one way or another, also try to save some reputation and try to come across as a responsible public representative who, when there's a cloud on their head and there's corruption the accusations on his head and is appearing in court, vacates his position to allow for the process of him clearing his name is called to proceed. So also there is that part where you must try and save your skin. I mean, that's what I'm saying. There's little political impact in whether he resigns or not, because in a week's time he will have been gone. But for his own political career and his own image, it makes sense for him to offer himself up for resignation, because then he comes across as a responsible public representative who wants to save face so that he's able to go to court and clear his name. But also on the other side, maybe be able to still stand in a position where he could be also still be considered for other positions in future because of how he acted on this issue.
Okay, now you know it's not the South African thing to do with a quick resignation. It's just not something we do, and maybe, as you said, you hoped we did so. Now, it doesn't make him more guilty or less guilty in terms of the actual case. That will run its course, right? But symbolically, what do you think then this does, not only for him, but certainly for other politicians, particularly within the ANC?
As I said, he come across as responsible, as accountable, as someone who doesn't want to embark the institution of government in his own legal rules. And also, it then gives an implication in future when a politician is corruption accused or standing in court. We will then ask a question: if Zizigota could resign so quickly, what stops this one? Because then it almost implicates other politicians to try in future to have a quick resignation like he does. But we know in South Africa that South African politicians in the main, they don't really follow good examples. I mean, leaving everything out of the resignation of Zizigotwa, I think it was a good thing that he resigned. He did a very good thing. And for that, at least he must get that little applause to say, he did a good thing. This is what other politicians must do. When you are accused of any crime of breaking the law or going against the South African Constitution, the best thing as someone who has taken an oath to uphold this Constitution is to step aside until you have been proven that you did not break the Constitution, you did not go against the Constitution, and be able to proceed. It is very bad for the institution of government to have people presiding over it who are accused of going against the Constitution when they have sworn that they will uphold the Constitution. It's very bad for this country.
Do you think the ANC has paid the price for that with so many of its leadership being accused in one form or the other of corruption? Not yet nailed, but just merely accused, and up to now not having their day in court. That is effectively impacted negatively on the ANC, particularly in this election we've just had.
I think so. That's one. The one thing is, the corruption accusations have dealt with the ANC. But what has dealt with the ANC mostly in these elections, which I think the South African public also reflected upon, is a matter of saying, but what have they done when the accusations are there? Because for me, that's the biggest thing. The problem is not just the accusations themselves, but what do you do about them? How do you come across? Do you come across and what you call defend corruption accused individuals and defend people who have got prima facie cases to respond to, and then you claim some third force involvement and all these things that they've claimed in the past, and not take accountability and not be decisive against your members? I think South Africans have grown very, a big dislike of the arrogance of incumbency of the ANC.
Okay.
That the ANC being in power, the ANC does not want to act against its own, the ANC does not want to account and bring the nation into confidence when these accusations are
okay.
made.
Lastly, is there a way back for Zizigotwa politically?
I mean, this is South African politics. There is always one way or another for a politician to come back. I mean, it's always a matter of just taking a bit of a break, going through the case, the judicial process, and of course, because the courts and how courts are designed and how they are located in the social political space of South Africa, the courts also can be used. We've seen in the past how the court can be used to drum up support to be able to at least stay in the imagination of people. The comeback can always be there, but how well he comes back will also going to depend on how he sanitizes himself as he deals with these corruption charges.
And I thought sanitizer was what we heard during COVID, but that's all gone. Thank you for your time. Much appreciated. We certainly are going to follow that story. Thabani Zika Kalala, independent political analyst. But here's the story for the moment. Zizi Kodwa having his day in court now, being formally charged and not stepping aside, but effectively resigning as the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture immediately. He does claim his innocence, but he's resigned as the Minister. What do you make of that? Do you have an opinion on this one? What should he have done? Should he have resigned? Should he have stepped aside or just let it run, considering he may or may not be the new Minister of Sport in the new dispensation? What do you make of it? Right, to call in, 086 000 2032, WhatsApp, voice note or text 0614 104 107. This is the National Pulse.
Here on SAFM, we honor the contribution of the youth for our liberation. We also celebrate the liberation of our beloved country. Happy Youth Month, South Africa. You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
Right, now we normally around this time we have the Global Watch feature, but not just talking globally, it's very much in the SADC region. So let's talk about the issues of food security, right? Now, and the big question really is, can SADC leaders improve agriculture and food security in this region by 2025, which means next year, right? As the Malabo Declaration deadline approaches, we look at the Southern African Development Community's regional consultation meeting on the post-Malabo agenda. And that's currently being talked about in Lusaka in Zambia. And the gathering hopes to come up with some concrete solutions that are aimed at shaping the future of agricultural development, not just in the SADC region, but throughout the African continent. Right, let's try and understand what this means with Dr. Manyewu Mutamba, who's the acting head of agriculture at the African Union Development Agency, that's NEPAD, right? So thank you for your time, Dr. Mutamba. Appreciate it. Dr. Mutamba, you're live on the National Pulse. Hello.
Yes, good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Good afternoon. Right, let's talk about, we've been touching on food security in the intro, and the big question from a SADC region issue is food security post-2025. Where are we at with those sort of deadlines?
We still have a long way to go, Ashraf, I should say. We, as a continent, we've set very steep targets for ourselves. And from the work that we've been doing and the support we've been giving to our member states, we recognize that there's still a lot of work to do. And we are already currently looking at how we can proceed in the next 10 years. So as we speak, we are in the process of defining a 10-year strategy for the continent to pursue the targets that we've set ourselves for the continent. With respect to food security, with respect to investment in agriculture, essentially as the driver of an agriculture-led growth and poverty reduction strategy, and as well as ending hunger and malnutrition and contributing to poverty alleviation. So we have a number of targets that we've already set as a continent for ourselves, and we still some way to achieving those.
Okay, what are those specific targets? I mean, can you put some meat on those targets? Although we're talking about
I've already alluded to some of them. Essentially, we've really said, we want to use agriculture to drive growth and poverty reduction, and to do that, we've really said we need to elevate our investment in agriculture. I'm sure you would know that as a continent, we've set 10% of our public spending to be, invested in agriculture as a prerequisite to driving the kind of growth that we need in agriculture. Essentially, the target is to really see agriculture growing at 6%. And with these kinds of growth rate, we're looking at, ending hunger by 2025. But as you know, we're still some way to doing that. And also the ambition was to really have, poverty, knowing that our continent really has a huge population that depends on agriculture as the major economic activity. Some of the targets also related to intra-Africa trade. We wanted to triple intra-Africa trade in agricultural commodities by 2025. So we're still some way to doing that. The other target was really around building resilience of our production systems in the face of a changing climate. And we were looking at ensuring that at least 30% of our smallholder producers have, climate resilient production, systems. So these are some of the targets that we've really, put for ourselves as a continent.
In terms of the brains trust that's got together, right? You already made the point there have been targets, but many of those targets not likely to be met. Not now, not 2025, right? Has there been an analysis of some of the strategic thinking that's gone into those targets before and what needs revision moving forward?
Yes, Ashraf. We are currently in the process of reviewing and looking at many of those targets and many of the challenges that we have identified during the various levels of analysis that is we have undertaken. So the general consensus is really that it's not an issue of the validity of the challenges or the targets themselves, but as a continent, we've really been found wanting when it comes to implementation. We have good plans, we have good policies, we have good instruments, but we've really been lacking with respect to capacity for implementation.
And why do you think that's the case? Why have we been
generally lacking? It's a number of things, but capacity has really been one of the major drawbacks. But political commitment, particularly at the highest level, has really been identified as one of the weaknesses. Without high-level political commitment and the commitments for resources to ensure the investments that we require, it is very difficult to make progress.
Well, you just said it. Commitment, resources, implementation, all those things so interlinked. Let's leave it at that, Dr. Manyewu Mutamba, the acting head of the Agriculture, the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, right? Well, there you are. Your thoughts on that in terms of particularly around food security and being able to understand the region's impact around growing agriculture and providing the type of needs that this entire region and the entire continent requires, right? Think about that and feel free to join the conversation on that issue. Let's get to some of the callers in the meantime. KG, you're in Pretoria. Hi.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Good indeed. Right. What's you have a view on the elections? Go ahead.
You know what? This coalition thing is not sitting well with me. For instance, the DA and the ANC are worlds apart.
Okay.
Now, having them in a discussion is going to actually end up disenfranchising me as a voter, in the sense that there might be one of the parties, either the ANC or the DA, might end up being armed into actually abandoning some of their policies that I, as a voter, actually voted them for. So I think it's best to just amend the constitution. We must just go back to the voting booth.
But you see, that's the problem with let's just look at it. It may happen if we have to, but for now, we were given a chance to vote, you and I and everybody else, right? And not more than 40% voted for the one party that got the most votes, which means nobody got more than 50%. So that's the message the voters have sent to the country, which is work together now, because we don't trust any one of the parties to effectively govern on their own. That's the message. Now, if we then say, who changes the constitution? That's not going to happen in a week. You need to be in parliament to change that, right? So you have to run the course. And we're going to actually have a conversation later about election reruns, if anything. But for now, we're stuck with what we have. So the question is, how do we thresh out a deal, even with people who don't talk to each other or ideologically differ?
I hear you, and I fully agree with what you're saying, Ashraf. But now, remember, I as a voter had made a choice. And I don't want compromises on the party that I voted for, because I voted for them because I agree with a whole lot of their policies. Now, the DA doesn't agree a lot with the policies of the ANC. We're going to end up strong-arming each other, and that will leave us as the voters unhappy, and we end up actually getting what we didn't actually ask for.
Okay, let's leave it at that. I think there is this thought. Thanks for that call, KG. There's the thought, and I've heard it even today. We had it Party Lahotla saying it the other day. We heard it this morning on the SFM Sunrise show from Matthew Sposa that an NCDA coalition effectively would kill off the ANC sometime down the line. But I also made the point in my opening remarks, which parties are putting South Africa ultimately first and parties second, and should they do that? There's other comments. Ashraf, Minister Mantashe, President Ramaphosa, Nomvula Mokonyane should follow Mr. Kodwa immediately to Palm Ridge. And there's another one. Are we going to see Floyd Shivambu being charged as he also received a loan, in inverted commas, from VBS through his brother that comes from Vic in Pretoria? Lots of questions around people in high places, right? Let's get to the news headlines now. It's 3:30. Here's Danae Omar.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. A very good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 3:30. The ANC says it has met with at least 6 political parties with a view of forming coalition governments or a government of national unity at national and provincial levels. In other news, convicted rapist and murderer Thabo Bester has made an impassioned plea for the public to sign a petition for the death sentence to be imposed on him. He told the Free State High Court that he is being treated inhumanely in prison. And Israel has launched a new military campaign in central Gaza as international mediators prepare for talks in Doha aimed at advancing a ceasefire and a hostage deal. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
For me, I have to say it. I've been saying the Minister of Sport to you for the last month.
Yeah.
You still are the Minister of Sport, although we don't have another Minister of Sport.
Unfortunately.
Go ahead and tell us about sport, Minister of Sport.
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and our listeners. Yes, we're starting with that news that's just coming in that Zizi Godwa has resigned as Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture with immediate effect. This as he faces charges of corruption amounting to 1.7 million rand. Now, Godwa and his co-accused were arrested today and granted 30,000 rands bail. They are expected in court next month. I did try to reach out to the department. However, they do say that they are not taking any interviews for now. Then in rugby, Nizam Kar says that the Bulls are bracing for an all-out attack when Benetton arrive at Loftus Versfeld on Saturday. Jake White's charges host Benetton in a Vodacom URC quarterfinal this week, and victory for the Herd will book the venue for a semi-final next week. In football, as Bafana Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce has reiterated that his target in the next two 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Nigeria and Zimbabwe is 4 points. Bafana plays Nigeria in Uyo on Friday and returns for their 4th game in Group C against Zimbabwe in Bloemfontein next Tuesday. And they left for Nigeria this morning.
Qualifiers for World Cup, everybody knows that every one of us wants to go and wants to be qualified for the World Cup in 26, but we are in front of 2 very tough games. First of all, Nigeria, finalist African players who are playing in the best competitions in Europe. At the other side, we saw also what we can do against them on AFCON. If we had a little bit luck on our side, we were in the final and not Nigeria. I think we were the best team in the semi-finals. We could have won that, so we don't have to be afraid. The other game against Zimbabwe is different, and a game between neighbors. I think that Zimbabwe, after the ban of AFCON last year, they have another team with another coach. From that side, it will be a tough game, but our goal has to be at least 4-6. I don't want to lose any of those 2 games. I want to win one, and I want to have a draw. That means 4-6, we will stay in the race for qualifying, for the World Cup. And that has to be our goal for the next 2 games.
Moving on to netball, Spar Proteas coach Jenny van Dijk believes that it's possible for the Crinums to secure an unbeaten run this season, judging by their consistency in the 2024 edition of the Telkom Netball League. The Free State side under coach Martha Muswatle-Sam have retained their unbeaten streak, winning 8 games and a draw in their 9 outings, leaving them on the summit with 17 points in Division A ahead of the defending champions Gauteng Jaguars. Van Dijk says that the Cranhams have been convincing from day one of the tournament and believes that their performance has been inspirational. In motorsport, six-time MotoGP world champion Marc Marquez will join the Ducati factory team in 2025 and team up with the reigning champion Francesco Bagnaia. Now, Marquez, who currently rides for Ducati's satellite team, which he joined at the start of the year after 11 seasons at Honda, will replace the Italian Enea on a 2-year contract. Marquez has not won a race since October 2021 and lies 8th in the standings at the midway point of the season. Then finally, in women in sport, the spotlight is on Vuyisile Jaca. She's the first African black woman to win the Around the World Ocean Globe race, and she says that she's still working hard to achieve more in the sailing world. Jaca was part of Maiden's 12-member all-woman crew that raced around the world in 153 days, 2 hours, 60 minutes and 53 seconds, becoming the first female-only team to win the 50-year-old event. And she says that she fell in love with sailing at the age of 16.
So I was introduced to sailing when I was in JG Zuma High School, when a subject called nautical science was introduced to 5 schools in KZN, and JG Zuma was one of those schools who were doing nautical science, and I was already doing maritime studies at that time. So my nautical teacher, who was an ex-Navy, together with Sail Africa, they organized a taste of sailing for us back in 2015. And we used to go there. It's at the harbor, at the sailing foundation called Sail Africa, where they introduce disadvantaged high school kids who have maritime or nautical science as subjects. They introduce them to water sports, mainly sailing.
Absolutely proud of her. She's only 25 years of age, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else she's going to do in the world of sailing.
But is that a good age, young age, old age in sailing?
I think
don't know.
Young. It's absolutely young, and I think it's great, especially the fact that she's an African woman. Usually when it comes to blacks, when it comes to swimming or anything water-wise, we don't want to see ourselves there, but to take something like this, she even says that she wants to study something that will help her in this endeavor that she's in right now.
Historically, all shades of black in South Africa never had swimming pools, all of us. I mean, I can give you my example. Yeah. When we were lighties and we would drive from home and go to the Zoo Lake, then somehow we got wind that there's one house on the hill before the Zoo Lake that had a pool. Not our house, whoever house it was, right? White people living there, of course, right? And only because we could sneak, because it was a hill, just to look at the pool, gave us a unique sense of excitement. And we did it I think for 15 years of my life. And that reflects just that incredible divide of the haves and the haves not in South Africa, and divide on racial lines.
Absolutely, but it also shows how far we've come for a young 25-year-old black lady to say, listen, I mean, sailing, she's done it. She's become the first African woman to sail around the world at the age of 25. Absolutely amazing.
Sail with the wind. Let's let her do that. Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you. More sport in an hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M2 eastbound in central Johannesburg has a crash reported near Heidelberg Road. Queuing traffic reported on multiple routes throughout that Crown area. Summit Road westbound in Midrand has a crash reported at Plantation Road. In KZN, the M4 southbound has a crash near the N2 highway exit. The N3 westbound has a stationary vehicle reported. That's near the M13 Paradise Valley interchange. The N3 eastbound in Linfield Park has a stationary truck just before Mlaws Road, causing heavy delays. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound has a stationary vehicle on Plattekloof Hill. That's causing some slow-moving traffic. The N12 is closed between Oudtshoorn and De Rust, and that's due to road surface collapse incident reported near Leroux Station. And the R303 has flooding reported between the N7 highway and Citrusdal, so expect delays and diversions. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Are you ready to empower yourself with an accredited tertiary qualification? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning programs will set you up for success. Whether you're balancing work and family or you're a school leaver who must work to support yourself and your studies, Stadio offers access to high-quality, affordable qualifications in law, teacher education, commerce, admin and management, policing, and more. Mid-year applications are now open. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
EFC is live this Thursday. Two of the most thrilling fighting talents to have emerged from the Mother City in recent years, Tamelo Manyamala and Terrence Bolelo, put everything on the line to face each other for the interim flyweight title, which guarantees a shot against the currently unavailable champion Nkazimulu Zulu later in the year. Also, Ayanda Zwane and Sibarashe Akonya fight for #1 contendership. EFC 114 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
What do you think the ANC should do? I mean, should it go with the EFF or MK? Should it go in another direction? What do you think should happen next?
It's not so simplistic, Stephen. I don't believe in coalitions. They're like jellyfish. I believe in a government of national unity. I don't think anyone should say any party is irrelevant. All the parties are relevant. They represent South Africans. Politics is the art of the possible, Stephen, and it's about interest. If the ANC went into a coalition with the DA now, the ANC can kiss the local government elections in the next 18 months goodbye.
Dr. Matthews Pauser, of course, have played a very long role in the ANC and in our fight for liberation.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Right, there's been so much conversation in the last few days, about coalitions, then government of national unity, things like hung parliament, re-election, and so on, election runoff. And we thought, let's find out more about what's possible and what's not possible in the days ahead, right? Professor Pierre De Vos is with us. He will talk about just that, but let me first bring him in. Prof. De Vos, appreciate your time. Hi.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, I'll tell you what, the reason we're talking to you, one is because we've had lots of people asking questions about what's possible. But even a few minutes ago, we had someone saying, just have a re-election, man. We don't want to be with other parties. Let's have a re-election. But in particular, we've had a very regular listener to the show, Mvusi Wekaya, who said, in fact, he said this. So let's listen to this voice note first.
Can you guys tell us now, or bring people who are going to provide more information, nuanced information about what does the Constitution say about the situation we're in now? Is the coalition issue or a minority government the only options that are to be explored? What about the rerun? Is it in the law? And what are the requirements for that rerun? And who is eligible in the political parties that participated in the elections to go for that rerun? I want to say this. The difference between 94 and now for the ANC is that we formed the GNU in a position of strength and to build national unity. Now we are in a position of weakness. And I doubt that we will survive forming a coalition with a party like the DA. It will be detrimental for the ANC. This is Mvusi Wekai.
Well, thanks for that, Mvusi Wekayo. But so, Prof. De Vos, so let's stay with outside the emotions, simple law, right? What's the difference, between a government of national unity, a minority government, or a coalition, as we often talk about now?
Yeah, the government of national unity is not really a legal term or technical term that is normally used. It was used in South Africa between 1994 and 1999 because for that 5 years, the Constitution itself required there to be basically a coalition with the two largest parties each being able to appoint a deputy president, and every party with, I think, more than 5% of the vote automatically being in the government of national unity. I think what people now mean with such a government of national unity is that political parties from across the spectrum all come together, at least if they have any sizable number of MPs, in one coalition government. I suspect that's different from a coalition where what you really want is to get a majority of the members of the National Assembly to come together with you in a government. So you give different parties different cabinet positions, and they govern together. And you need that more than 50% because you need that to pass, to elect the president and, of course, to pass legislation.
Okay, and the key part is saying they govern together. And that's the part that many parties are concerned that in being seen as governing together or co-governing, they would be tainted, particularly if if it means they have to agree on ideologically very, very different issues, right? And therefore, for many people, a coalition may be a no-no. Now, the government of national unity, you made the point earlier on, that that first one, it was agreed upon before the election, but in terms of sheer numbers, if it was not agreed upon, the ANC did not have to do that, right? What's their option of what we call a minority government?
Yes, so there are two possibilities here. If there's no coalition agreement at all, when the first sitting of the National Assembly happens, within 14 days after the results were declared, somebody is going to be elected president and premier in each of the provinces. That president or premier is the person who, in terms of the constitution, forms the government. So he or she decides who's in the cabinet, whatever. If you have a minority, nobody has, there's no coalition, then that will still happen. The president will be elected. The president will appoint the cabinet. But now the problem is the president and the cabinet, the government, can at any time be removed from office if a majority of the MPs vote in a vote of no confidence. So it's a kind of precarious government where you have the one party, the ANC, in government, but at any time if the other parties come together, the government can be collapsed. There's an in-between, what they call confidence and supply arrangement, where opposition party doesn't go into government. They don't get cabinet positions or whatever, but they make an agreement and say, we agree that we will support the budget and some other pieces of legislation, and that we won't support a vote of no confidence, but we are staying out of the government.
Okay.
That's a slightly more stable version of the minority.
And to go back to that presidential vote, you're saying, in fact, that we've got 14 days, whether an agreement is reached or not, a president has to be elected. Now, if that's the case, it would be from the sitting members in that first sitting of the National Assembly. Now, let's assume everybody's present, right? Then you'd assume that the one party that will have the most votes, because there's no agreement, would be the ANC with 40 votes, or 40%. Would that give them enough, considering you would normally need 50% plus one?
No, that wouldn't give them enough, because the Constitution and Schedule 3, which explains the voting procedure, says that you can only get elected as president if you win a majority of the votes that are cast. So not just the most votes, a majority of all the votes cast. If there are more than two candidates, and in the first round now, no one gets more than half the votes cast, then the candidate who got the least votes, he's kicked off the ballot, and then there's another round of voting, and so it goes until there are two candidates, and then one of them, unless it is 200 for and 200 against, but in all other cases, one candidate will get a majority, the other one wouldn't, and that one person.
Okay, got that right. So here's the last thing then. In terms of the two other thoughts about what about having an election runoff if there's no coalition agreement reached, and what about a fresh election? Can that happen? How soon?
It cannot immediately happen because the Constitution says that you can only have an election if the term of if we speak nationally, of the National Assembly comes to an end, 5 years, or if 3 years have already passed, and then the National Assembly votes to dissolve itself to have a new election. But it cannot happen in the first 3 years. There's a third option. If the government is formed and it then collapses, there's a vote of no confidence, or if the president resigns, or if the president dies, then there's a vacancy. Then a new president will again have to be elected, but the Constitution says if that cannot happen in 30 days, then a new election will be held. Okay. But that cannot happen in the first round of voting after the election because there's no vacancy in the presidency. The president continues to be president until a new person is elected.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up, Prof. Pierre de Vos. Much appreciate your time. We're not going to have an election. That's what they're saying, a re-election. So get that out. Reach an agreement somewhere or the other. You and your parties have got to make a plan. Let's talk about some really important issues around claims to Old Mutual right after this.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Right, this segment is brought to you by Old Mutual Life Assurance Company, SA Limited. And we're speaking to John Manyike, who will talk to us about Old Mutual's claim process. Lots of confusion around claims processes, what's possible, what's not possible. So we thought, let's talk about just that. John Manyike is the head of financial education at Old Mutual. John, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon indeed. Right now, first of all, is there often confusion around how do people claim?
No, absolutely. I mean, and again, I must also hasten to add that as much as the different financial institutions may have other nuances, but in the main, all financial institutions would require similar documentation. Yes, there are certain transactions that can be done, in different ways, either via call center. But when it comes to funeral claims in particular, the ideal one is to actually engage with a customer services branches and actually provide them with the necessary document, which I think is also important to highlight. Which are those? Because if you don't have all the relevant documentation when you claim, you may find yourself having to have a bit of a back and forth because there's some documents that are outstanding. Okay,
so generally in your experience, when it comes to claims processes, what for you are the single biggest issue, logjam, in this claim and processing of claim process?
Yeah, so okay, some of the main documents relate to your what we call a BI 163 document, which is accompanied by death certificate. That's a document that normally is used to actually get a death certificate. So the funeral parlors normally assist clients as well as hospitals. So that death certificate is very crucial. Of course, the ID copy of the deceased, as well as the claimant, the bank details of the claimant. In the event that the person who's passed away, the life insured, died due to unnatural causes, and this is very important, there's an additional document that will be required, which is called the police declaration. And the reason for that document is that, if a person died due to unnatural causes, either it's a suicide or an accident, you have to rule out foul play in such cases. And if it so happens that the claimant is cited as a suspect in the investigation, it's highly unlikely there's no financial institution would want to proceed with that claim until they satisfy themselves that it's not one of those rosemary situations that they're dealing with. So those are the documents that in the main would be required by financial institutions when a person claims, including but not limited to only. Okay. However, there are other challenges then where that could cause delays, yeah.
All right. And in terms of, those challenges, in terms of platforms that, clients or insurers in this case put through claims, what are those platforms? And do clients, are they very familiar with them?
Well, look, in the main, I know that there are institutions that would allow people to forward emails. But when it comes to funeral claims, there is unfortunately a lot of fraud out there, and you want to make sure that you're dealing with legitimate documentation. It's always better to hand in your documentation at a branch. Yeah.
What about, in terms of the financial education? It's interesting we're talking to you, right? Therefore, in terms of your role and the general education, we've just come out of election, issues of voter education, as we've seen, no matter how much education takes place, it's never enough, right? What then is your role, and how do you ensure that, clients or insurers are sufficiently educated around the processes?
Yeah, I think it's important to also educate the consumer about roles and responsibility on both ends. When I say from both ends, I'm talking about roles and responsibility of me as a client. What are my roles and responsibility? What are the roles and responsibility of the financial institution? And that's part of it. And also, in the event that you're not satisfied with the level of service, or you're not satisfied with the quality of financial advice you receive, there are processes in place that you can escalate to the complaints department of the relevant financial institution. If you're still not satisfied, if you're not getting joy with how they responded, you can refer or escalate the matter to the ombuds. If it's a long-term complaint relating to your life insurance policies, it will be the long-term ombuds. If it's a short-term related, meaning your car or household content, it will be the short-term ombuds. That would be the ideal process to follow in order to get resolution. And the ombuds has the power to make a determination, and that decision is binding on the financial institution.
And are those ombuds used often, or do people stay away from them?
Again?
Are these, the ombudsman, is that person used often as a vehicle to be able to sort out disputes, or do people tend to stay away from them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The ombuds deals with tons and tons of complaints across the industry. Unfortunately, some clients may not be aware, and it's our duty to educate the customer to say, look, if you feel you're not being treated fairly, these are avenues that you have, and you can be rest assured that when an ombuds make a decision, independently so, it is binding on the financial institution.
Okay. So maybe let's just take us through a typical claim, in terms of processes from claim to finish, typically.
Okay, so in a nutshell, basically, obviously, if you've lost a loved one, you provide us with the relevant documentation, your identity document, the death certificate of the deceased, and the declaration by police in the instance of accidental death, and that's what you actually submit to a financial institution. In the context of Old Mutual, and I mentioned this specifically just as an example, about 88% of those claims are paid within 4 hours. The other delays could be different reasons. One could be, maybe the particulars you are submitting when you're submitting a claim are different from the particulars that you provided when you took the policy. And there are many instances like that, because a person could have a name that they use in the family, but that name is not in the person's ID, and the death certificate will have a different name. Those kind of situations can cause delays, because a financial institution has to verify, and they need to satisfy themselves that they were dealing with one and the same person.
So very, very, very important. And sometimes people tend to stay away from those important issues. Just on the last thing on the education part, do you find that people generally get scared off by the jargon? They're not scared to insure. They know the need for it, right? And to claim when they have to. But the jargon just chases them away.
No, it's true. It is important to use plain and simple language when you're engaging with customers. That first conversation with a financial advisor is very critical. But I also think that we perhaps maybe underestimating the role of a financial advisor, and meeting your financial advisor at least once a year, if not twice a year. Because the reality is that sometimes you may forget, the terms of the policy. It's not easy to remember every little detail in terms of the terms of your policy. And at times when a person has forgotten, and then you want to claim only to find that there are certain exclusions. that are not covered, and that's what brings a bit of unhappiness. So stay close to your financial advisor and look at your policy document. We don't review a policy document. Sometimes we may have submitted incorrect information, unintentionally so, but then we then take it for granted. You don't want to wait until there's a claim for you to fix it. It might be difficult to prove that you are claiming for the same person. For example, when it comes to cars, I can't go and claim for a car with a different description from what I submitted. You might be owning two cars, and then the other one is not broken that you've insured, and the other one is broken. Same with a life cover.
Okay.
If you told us you're covering John, and then you're submitting the claims of James, there's going to be a problem.
Absolutely. That's where we can leave it. Thank you for your time. John Manyike was the head of financial education at Old Mutual. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer.
Old Mutual has partnered with the Gift of the Givers Foundation on an innovative investment solution that enables you and Old Mutual to contribute towards disaster relief efforts across South Africa. Introducing the Old Mutual Gift of the Givers Life Fund, a partnership that goes beyond investments to create mutual futures. Old Mutual, do great things every day. Old Mutual Life Assurance Company SA Limited is a licensed FSP and life insurer.
Right, let's get to the news now. It's 4 o'clock with Daneo.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories. ANC assesses coalition options and Thabo Bester makes a stunning request. Good afternoon. We begin with election news. The ANC says it has met with at least 6 political parties with a view of forming coalition governments or a government of national unity at national and provincial levels. This came out at the party's media briefing in Johannesburg earlier this morning. The parties include the DA, EFF, IFP, NFP and PA. ANC spokesperson Mahlengi Bengu Mutsiri says they want to form a government that will put the interest of the people of South Africa first. However, she says they've not made any headway with the MK party, but will continue to engage with them.
We have been meeting with all parties that are keen to contribute ideas on how we can collectively move our country forward. The national officials reported to the National Working Committee that the ANC has repeatedly reached out to the MK party for an engagement meeting with no positive response. Our door remains open as we continue to reach out to every party that is keen to contribute positively to moving our country forward.
In other news, convicted rapist and murderer Thabo Bester has made an impassioned plea for the public to sign a petition for the death sentence to be imposed on him. He told the Free State High Court that he's being treated inhumanly in prison. Bester told the court that his so-called co-accused know nothing about his alleged escape from prison. The Bester escape saga has been postponed to the 24th of next month for yet another pre-trial hearing. The court gave Bester 7 days to get a new legal representative after his lawyer withdrew from the matter.
I request that the public, if they are so convinced, and if the prosecution is so convinced that I am the waste of these people's lives, that this section be enforced on a panel or on a petition, that under the previous Act of Correctional Services, of Criminal Prosecution, Act 126 of 92, that a death sentence be given as a petition, that the public signs a petition, and I be given a death sentence, and immediately I will agree to it. So we end this matter.
In Gauteng, the Border Management Authority BMA officials have arrested 25 travellers for contravention of the Immigration Act at OR Tambo International Airport last night. Officials conducted a routine intelligence-driven operation and monitored flights from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Ghana and Nigeria. 13 Bangladeshis and 3 Pakistanis were found in possession of fake visas, while 1 Bangladeshi, a Nigerian, 3 Pakistanis and 4 Ghanaians Ethiopians failed to meet the relevant entry requirements on arrival. BMA spokesperson Memme Mokhotsi says they were deported back to their home countries.
OR Tambo International Airport has been a target with various travelers attempting to enter the country illegally. This past Sunday on the 2nd of June, 5 more Bangladeshis and 5 Ethiopians were intercepted in collaboration with the airport's company South Africa. The BMA has adopted a zero-tolerance approach to criminal or unlawful behavior at all ports of entry. Travelers are warned to avoid attempting to enter South Africa illegally, as they will be caught by BMA officials.
Moving to the Western Cape, humanitarian aid organization Gift of the Givers says it has been inundated with calls for help from various communities across Cape Town. This as inclement weather conditions have resulted in flooding in a number of informal settlements. The organization's Dr. Naeem Kathrada says Lwandle and Nomzamo in Strand have been identified as areas with the most pressing need at the moment.
We got frantic calls from the communities in Lwandle, Mzamo and Strand, as well as other areas where we got phone calls throughout the night, but it was decided to come out to Lwandle. A lot of the people's homes have been damaged, food destroyed, clothing destroyed. So we've got our teams that are here today that will be providing warm meals, blankets and food.
Lastly, Israel has launched a new military campaign in central Gaza as international mediators prepare for talks in Doha aimed at advancing a ceasefire and hostage deal. Local medics say at least 44 Palestinians have been killed. The BBC's Yolandi Nell reports.
Witnesses say there's been intense bombardment in eastern Deir el-Balah and the urban refugee camps of central Gaza, where the Israeli military says it's hitting Hamas targets. Tanks have also rolled back into Al-Baraj refugee camp, an area from which Israeli ground forces previously withdrew. The new Israeli operation began as Qatari, Egyptian and American mediators were set to meet in Doha to try to advance a new ceasefire and hostage release deal.
Recapping the top story this hour, the ANC says it has met with at least 6 political parties with a view of forming coalition governments or a government of national unity at national and provincial levels. Headlines at 4:30 for SFM News. I'm Dinomo Taung.
And coming up in your sports this hour, we hear from Danny Jordan on what would accelerate professionalization of women's football, and South Africa's Donald Rampadi coming from a sit-down to beat David Wagner and the Roland Garros. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is slow moving towards Crown Interchange. Houghton Drive northbound in Parktown has delays towards Newton Street. Winnie Mandela Drive northbound in Four Ways is slow moving towards the N1 highway, and the N24 in Centurion is closed between the Swartskop entrance and Alaric Road due to a road collapse incident. In KZN, the M4 southbound has a crash near the N2 highway exit that's causing delays. The N3 westbound is slow moving towards the M13 Paradise Valley interchange. The N2 southbound has a crash after Umgeni Road, and the N3 eastbound in Linfield Park has a stationary truck just before Umlaas Road causing some heavy delays. In the Eastern Cape, flooding, debris, wash away obstructions flowing, heavy rains in that Kariga area, so we ask that you please proceed with absolute caution throughout that region. The N2 southbound has sea debris on the carriageway between John Talent Road and the M4 Settlers Way, so expect delays. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive. The M5 southbound is slow moving towards Racecourse Road exit, and Main Road is slow moving through that central Wynberg area. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
I tell you what, it's interesting how people's minds get racing, whereas the obvious issue would be, let's talk about coalition politics and which parties will finally reach agreement or some sort. The other conversation I've had is some people saying, what are the new MPs going to be earning? How much do they earn per month? What are the perks, travel perks, other perks? Is it tax deductible, or is it a net figure that they earn? So I'll tell you what, if you know, let me know. If you think you know, rather. Otherwise, I need to get Tembo Keys, my producer, to say, hold it, just Google it up once again and let's get an update in terms of what they're likely to earn. Because, it's certainly in the public interest and it's public knowledge, right? What is certainly in the public interest is the issue of the position of the African National Congress as the party that did not get the majority vote in South Africa's 2024 election, but they certainly had more votes than any other party. However, 4 out of 10, 40% out of 100%, ain't enough for them to rule or govern on their own. They need to make some deals to get over that 50+1. The question is, what sort of deals? Now, the African National Congress had a press conference today. That's part of its National Working Committee meeting. And they spoke about, some of the processes that they may consider in trying to strike a deal with other parties to be able to, govern South Africa beyond what they've just done. Let's get an update on that with Ntebo Mokobo, SABC's news reporter. Ntebo, good chatting to you. You're live on the National Pulse. Hello.
Good afternoon, Ashraf, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Good afternoon. Right, so first of all, let's just get clarity. There's a National Working Committee meeting and there's a National Executive Committee meeting, I think, is happening tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
The National Executive Committee meeting is happening tomorrow, and the NWC had happened, and there are still sort of consultation behind closed doors in terms of what is likely to be contained in the agenda of the National Executive Committee meeting tomorrow.
And do I take it that as we've said, the National Executive, as opposed to working, that executive is a higher authority that makes the final decision on this issue?
Yep, the National Executive Committee is the one that will come up with the final decision in terms of what position the ANC is taking out of their discussion, that it's all about forming coalition governments or forming a government of national unity.
Okay. Now, I understand that coming out of today's meeting, there was a press conference, that is, where some pronouncements were made by the National Working Committee's position. So what's come through?
Well, what they're saying that, in fact, there are for a government of national unity where they will have a number of political parties. That would be a broad coalition of parties that have got like a substantial number of votes or a substantial number of seats in the National Assembly. And, of course, those parties, some of them include the ISP, the DA, the EFF, and the NFP, and as well as the PA. And they say that they've reached out to the MK party, we call that, Gweremantashe and Nomvula Mokonyane were part of the delegation that was sent to the MK party to sort of have a discussion with them, but they didn't succeed in terms of getting a hearing from the MK party officials. So all parties, they've engaged, 5 of them, except for the MK party that is still giving them a problem in terms of giving them a hearing.
Okay, so let's stay with that part. You're saying they actually attempted to meet them in KwaZulu-Natal, and they not only disagreed, but they didn't even get to talk to each other. They were refused entry, so to speak, right?
Yes, with the MK party, they're not making any headway. But of course, with other political parties, you would recall, and the IFP has got a substantial number of votes and even seats in the provincial legislature. So those ones, they are amenable to engage and have some discussions with the ANC. But with the MK party, they're having a problem there. And it's very interesting again, Ashraf, because at some point you would recall that the ANC, led by its deputy president Paul Mashatile, had a discussion around coalition governments, and they are very clear in terms of which political party should form a coalition government or lead discussions. They said at some point, Paul Mashatile's and team said that a political party which has got the highest number of votes is the one that should dictate in terms of what should happen or turn out in the constitution of these governments. But in KwaZulu-Natal, it would be interesting because the MK is the one that has got the highest majority. It will really be interesting to see how are those deliberations going to pan out, especially informed by what the ANC said at some point.
Okay. Now, in terms of the explanation today coming out of the National Working Committee about the recommendation is for a government of national unity, what was that explained, meaning why government of national unity as opposed to a coalition for the ANC?
Well, there hasn't been any sort of explanation, but I know that they just want to consider a broad coalition. It's a broad coalition. They want to engage with parties that has got substantial number of votes, as opposed to dealing with small parties. In a coalition government, you normally bring in small political parties. Political parties with some of them 1 seat, 2 seats, or 2% here and there. So they want to start with the parties that have got a high number of votes. You would recall in 1994, you've got the ANC working with the Nationalist Party, the National Party coming up with the deputy president. So even in this time around, although they're not talking about any position, but they want to start with political parties that have got the highest number of votes and the highest number of representation.
Based upon your own knowledge of how the ANC works, right? What are the likelihood of the National Executive Committee of the ANC accepting or rejecting a recommendation? We know they're the final body, but is it a normal course that they would take the recommendation and go with it, or oppose it if they disagreed?
Well, there is that likelihood, because there are people, for instance, who are opposed to working with the DA. Even now, if you think of COSATU and the SACP is having its own media briefing this afternoon at 4. In fact, it has just started now. They will put up their position in terms of whether they are likely to work with the DA, parties like the DA. And there are a number of issues that need to happen. There has to be a lot of convincing, especially if you are to work with all these parties. For instance, if you want to work with the PA, you need to have a bit of convincing. But if you have to work with the DA, there are a number of things that you need to consider. For instance, their position on South Africa's foreign policy, their position on black economic empowerment, because that's one thing that President Ramaphosa at some point was very unyielding, saying that some people want us to abandon the black economic empowerment and the employment equity as well as affirmative action, and we're not going to do that. So the SACP and COSATU are very steadfast on those policies. Mm-hmm. It will really be seen whether some communist and trade unionists who are not even in the SACP or even in COSATU, who are ANC, NEC members, whether will be convinced.
Well, there you are. We already know that COSATU has already publicly said, I think we had him on my show yesterday, saying that they would not support any coalition with the DA. So just lastly, with the NEC, would we expect a public pronouncement on it immediately after tomorrow's meeting or not?
Well, tomorrow the NEC is starting, and at some point we were told that, remember initially it was scheduled for Tuesday, 2 days, yesterday. And they said that immediately after the NEC meeting, the NEC will only consider a few items. It will be that coalition or how are they going to constitute government in provinces and even nationally. And then from there, the president will have to address the meeting late in the afternoon, if not even in the evening. But one issue is on the table. There's not really much on the table. So that issue will be deliberated quickly, and ultimately around 4 in the afternoon or even in the evening around 6. Then the president will have to communicate, because remember, they've got 14 days to constitute government. There is no constitution of government at provincial and national level. It will throw the country into a constitutional crisis.
Okay, well, let's hope that that seat at the table, which they're going to table, will happen sometime tomorrow early afternoon, so we can cover it live here on the National Pulse. Thank you for your time, much appreciated, as we get that update from Ntebo Mokobo, the SABC News reporter, covering today's meeting of the National Working Committee, and the recommendation is they go for a government of national unity. How much clout does the NWC have on the NEC? Let's get to some of the callers now. We've had many people commenting on a range of issues, because I always ask you what drives the National Pulse. It's coalitions. It's now Zizi Kodwa as well. Ngango Mklaba on the road. Hi.
Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Good to connect with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Ashraf, I think it's a bit unfair for any of us to want to condemn Zizi for resigning. To be honest, that's what we should be expecting members of the public from any of the members that are serving in public office. So I think it's actually honorable what he did, and we must not look at the reasons behind it, whether his reasons are noble or not noble.
Okay. Well, I mean, has anybody condemned him for actually resigning?
I was listening to your analyst just before he concluded. At first, I think he was really of the view that his reason behind him resigning were not noble. He was trying to, maybe clean up his name and make sure that his records, being selected for future positions.
Okay, I would have thought he said it was very noble of him. That means it's not normal, but it's noble.
It was only when you asked that question right before you released him.
Okay, well, point made. Well, I mean, I agree with you. I think, we should have more of that in South Africa. We haven't had that for a long, long time.
Definitely. And can I say something, Ashraf?
Yeah.
And I can bet if most of the ministers and government officials had the attitude that visit portrayed today by resigning, perhaps the ANC will be not in the position that it finds itself today. Because you look at what Minister or former Minister Nabula tried to do, avoiding to just go and present herself to the police when she was asked to do so. And people are, they're not stupid. They can see the arrogance that people are portraying. So, but if people were acting in this manner, because it's not allegations, it's already been charged. Once you are charged, really, the only honorable thing to do is to resign. Nothing else.
Good point. And I think I'll leave it at that. I think your point made about the ANC would have fared better if they had dealt with issues of allegations of corruption within their ranks a lot better, not just last week, but a long, long time ago. I think there's no question about that. Thanks for that call, and Dango. Let's get to Michael in Port Elizabeth. Hi, Port Elizabeth, GE. What do they call it now? GB, in fact, right? Michael, hi. GQ. Is it GQ? It sounds very fashionable, GQ. Yeah. GQ sounds a lot fashionable, yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, a quick one. Look, when you join a political party, right, you join because you believe that there are certain principles or policies that the party will advance to change your economic situation. That's why you join a political party, right, in the main. Now, when you joined a party and then you vote for that party, okay, you're voting because of those principles. That's why you're voting. You believe that this is what the party will do for you. Okay. Now, if you look at what is happening now,
I'm going to push you in 15 seconds. We're almost on we need to take a break.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, right. The point I'm trying to make is that the voters that voted for, let's say, MK, EFF, or ANC, they have been left aside. It's now up to the leaders to decide what they want to decide.
Well, I think we agree with that. Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that call, Michael in Port Elizabeth. We'll pick up more conversations right after this.
Progress. It's the essence of Audi. Always pushing boundaries, exceeding expectations. Imagine extending the same progress to your Audi ownership. Now, extend your cover up to 15 years or 300,000 kilometers with the Audi Freeway Plan Extension. Keep moving forward with peace of mind and enjoy your Audi for longer. Experience value beyond tomorrow with an Audi Freeway Plan Extension. Visit audi.co.za or your nearest dealer for more information.
TV licenses have developed a new GIS-linked national address database to ensure that we can communicate with all our valued license holders. We now have a visual of all licensed and unlicensed households nationwide in order to effectively communicate with you. We remind you to take note of our payment reminders and avoid paying penalties due to non-compliance or choosing to ignore your legal obligation to pay your license fees. We can communicate with all our license holders through cost-effective electronic methods, enabling us to collect license fees and continue to support the national broadcaster, the SABC, in accordance with Section 27 of the Broadcasting Act No. 4 of 1999 as amended. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
What do you think the ANC should do? I mean, should it go with the EFF or MK? Should it go in another direction? What do you think should happen next?
It's not so simplistic, Stephen. I don't believe in coalitions. They're like jellyfish. I believe in a government of national unity. I don't think anyone should say any party is irrelevant. All the parties are relevant. They represent South Africans. Politics is the art of the possible, Stephen. And it's about interest. If the ANC went into a coalition with the DA now, the ANC can kiss the local government elections in the next 18 months goodbye.
Dr. Matthews Pauser, of course, have played a very long role in the ANC and in our fight for liberation.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. Here on SAFM, we honor the contribution of the youth for our liberation. We also celebrate the liberation of our beloved country. Happy Youth Month, South Africa.
Right, losing a loved one is never easy. Having to deal with all the paperwork afterwards is not appealing, especially when you or your family members are grieving. Knowing what to do when the time comes and having access to certain documents can make the process a little bit easier. Our mutual life assurance company, SA Limited, is a licensed FSP and life insurer.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, what moves the national pulse, right? Let me hear from you. Let's get to another important issue, and that is that of employees at Sibanye-Stillwater. It's been reported that more than 200 of the employees are staging an underground illegal sit-in at its operations in Kroondal. The company said that the morning shift employees at Kwezi Shaft, including contractors, initiated an illegal underground sit-in that was 2 days ago, in fact, with 211 remaining underground. The NUM Rustenburg leadership had a meeting with the employers at 2 p.m. as well. Let's find out more about it with Jeffrey Mwache, who's the NUM Rustenburg Regional Secretary. Jeffrey, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thank you for having us, and good afternoon to the listeners.
Thank you. Give us an update in terms of what has now happened at Sibanye-Stillwater.
No, I can confirm that around 2 o'clock this afternoon, all workers who had staged a sit-in underground had resurfaced from underground. And we were scheduled to meet with the employer at 15:30. So we've been waiting for them because now they are held up in a meeting with AMCU, which is the other trade union that is recognized as the operation. So, yes, I can confirm that all workers have come from underground, and now we were to negotiate with the employer as to what becomes the way forward.
What is the reason to resurface from underground?
I guess?
They were underground in the sitting. What is the reason to effectively call off the sitting?
No, the reason for the protest is that Sibanye have 3 operations in Rustenburg. That is Marikana, Rustenburg, and Kroondal. Now, the workers at both Marikana and Rustenburg were paid on the 1st of June their dividends from the employee share ownership scheme. And now it was an expectation of workers to be paid as well at Sibanye Kroondal. But this is the catch. At Sibanye Kroondal, we concluded a wage agreement last year, and then one of the conditions in the agreement was that the employee share ownership scheme should be a process issue and should be concluded within 90 days of the signature of the wage agreement. Now, that hasn't been happening because of the kind of attitude that we have from the management here. Now, they've been dragging time. Hence, now, when workers saw their counterparts at the other 2 operations being paid, then this triggered them to go this route that they've taken.
Okay, so in terms of, and you're bound to have a meeting later on today, that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, as I'm speaking to you, I'm waiting outside their offices. We were supposed to have a meeting at 3:30, but they are still engaged with AMCU. Hence, I'm saying as the other recognized trade union.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add to information you'd like to add that you think we need to know?
No, it's not information as such. It's a comment that, look, we think companies that are arrogant like Sibanye, the DMRNE should have assisted us long time ago, because we've been saying workers are on their own. Now, you look at the kind of attitude that is being displayed by Sibanye across the country. You will recall that earlier May, we staged a protest march against Sibanye at Carltonville in protest of the retrenchments that are going on. To this end, we haven't had a response. We haven't had a comment from the department. Now, our view was that these licenses, as regulated by the DMRNE, should have been taken a long time ago and be given to investors who are willing to be pro-workers, who are willing to respect the labor laws of this country.
Okay, let's leave it at that. Thank you for your time, Jeffrey Mwache, the NUM Rustenburg Regional Secretary. Love the fact that people, give us shout-outs from wherever they are listening, and they either do it via WhatsApp voice notes, which is probably the best way, or post on social media. You can find SAFM on the Twitter X platform, as well as on SAFM Radio, right? You can also find us on TikTok, by the way, just so that you know, right? But certainly on the, on Facebook today, Marco Tluama is certainly listening in, saying, Ashraf, coalition government is the only way to go to a new political party from the old one. I'm listening in live from Lesfontein in Blouberg municipality. Great. Love the shout out. Thank you. Brian Given Malekosi Makushwe saying, good afternoon, team, listening from Pretoria. And there's many others. I need to pick up on all those. Well, if you want to, give us a shout out. We'll give you a shout out in terms of where you're listening from and perhaps what you're doing as well in terms of the work you do. Lots of people asking about questions again about how much of the new MP is going to earn and what are the perks. Let's see if we can get that information as well. But there's more to come, including the issues from the youth capital around unemployment, and have the political parties dealt with the issues of unemployment in the manifestos, but very importantly, will they deal with them as part of the new government? In the meantime, let's get the news headlines. It's 4:30. Here's Deneo.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. Good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 4:30. The last remaining 31 mine workers who staged a sit-in at Sibanye Stillwater's Kwezi shaft in Rustenburg Northwest have resurfaced. In other news, the ANC says it has met with at least 6 political parties with a view of forming coalition governments or a government of national unity at national and provincial levels. And the Border Management Authority officials have arrested and deported 25 travellers for contravention of the Immigration Act at OR Tambo International Airport last night. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 eastbound in Bedfordview has a stationary vehicle after Spaghetti Junction, queuing traffic on multiple routes throughout that Crown area. Greyston Drive eastbound in Sandton has delays towards the M1 highway, and the N1 northbound in Midrand is slow moving towards Samrand Road exit. In KZN, the M4 southbound is queuing towards the N2 highway exit. The N2 southbound has a crash reported just after Mgeni Road that's causing delays. The N3 in Escort has roadworks with traffic restrictions near the Faro exit reported, and the N3 westbound in Pietermaritzburg has roadworks with traffic restrictions towards Hilton exit that's causing delays. In the Eastern Cape on the R61, the road collapse incident reported between Tata and Port St. John's with stop-go controls at 2 locations, and trucks are prohibited. Flooding, debris, wash away obstructions flowing with heavy rains in the Kariga area, so please proceed with caution throughout the region. The N2 southbound has sea debris on the carriageway between John Talent Road and the M4 Settlers Way, so you're asked to expect delays. In Cape Town, Bacon Cross Street outbound is slow moving towards the elevated freeway. Main Road outbound in Observatory is slow moving, that's towards the N2 highway. Spine Road westbound is slow moving at Jafta Kemasamolo Road. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Okavango Road exit, and Albert Road outbound is slow moving towards Salt River Circle. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Khapele.
Do I still call you the Minister of Sport? I don't know. But anyway, to me, you want to talk about what? Professional women's football in the country.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
President of South African Football Association, Danny Jordan, says that South Africa can accelerate the professionalization of women's football if the Premier League or the Premier Soccer League clubs had women's teams in their ranks. TS Galaxy and Royal AM are the only 2 teams with women's teams on their book, including obviously Mamelodi Sundowns, while Stellenbosch FC have just acquired the status of a club in the Soccer League.
The other matter is clubs being obligated to have a women's team. Now, we indicated from the beginning that one way of accelerating the professionalization of women's football is to make sure that your professional clubs, men's clubs, have a women's team. And the clear example is Mamelodi Sundowns. That started off because they had the team in the Sasol League. And when they came into the Hollywood Bets, they are the champions and they have been dominating. And that indicates to you that the standards set by the men's side in Mamelodi Sundowns influence how they deal on women's football.
Well, let me not forget SuperSport United, who have partnered with TUT, which is now known as TUT Matsatsantsa. In the meantime, Manchester United are in talks with defender Johnny Evans over extending his stay at the club. The 36-year-old returned to United last season from Leicester City, 8 years after his initial departure from Old Trafford. The Northern Ireland international initially started training with the club during pre-season to maintain his fitness, but was handed a one-year deal after impressing Erik ten Hag. Evans went on to make 30 appearances last season, including a substitute appearance in the FA Cup win against Manchester City. Then in cricket, the Indian captain Rohit Sharma says that he had unsuccessfully tried to get Rahul Dravid to stay on as coach, hailing him as a big role model. Dravid's contract runs at the end of the month, and he would not reapply for the job after almost 3 years in charge. India have failed to win a global trophy under Dravid, but Rohit was nevertheless full of praise for the 51-year-old former national skipper. Dravid took over the team from Ravi after the 2021 T20 World Cup, and this year's edition in the United States and West Indies is his last chance to end India's search for major international silverware that stretches back to 2013. In wheelchair tennis, SA's Donald Rampadi came from a set down to beat David Wagner 3-6, 6-2 and 6-1 in the Roland Garros quad wheelchair singles quarterfinals. On that note, it is a wrap from myself for now. I'll have more in at the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I am
I want to ask you it's interesting about professionalizing football because, women's football has lagged behind in this country. And I think thanks particularly to people like Fran Hilton-Smith, who played a huge role in popularizing it, besides the players, right? But I think in the CAF Champions League, they made it a condition, right?
They did.
You couldn't play in the CAF Champions League if you didn't have a women's team.
And we got to see the likes of SuperSport now partnering with TUT. Obviously, Pirates also, there was rumors that they're trying to get a team, even Kaizer Chiefs. And I do agree with Danny Jordan saying that, listen, the more PSL teams have women's sides, the better. And I always have said that if these PSL clubs get these women's sides on their own, not because CAF says, it makes it that much meaningful. Like Stellenbosch FC, you can see how they really wanted this women's side. And I mean, they even went as far as one of the Stellenbosch FC men's side games. They used that opportunity to introduce their women's side, just to show that we actually taking them serious.
But I mean, the other issue, and this is not a football issue, this is a South African transformation issue. If organizations do not willingly understand the need to change, then you implement quotas, which is what affirmative action is all about, and therefore quotas really do matter. And this is another example of a quota that sometimes has to be implemented. Yeah?
True.
Okay, we'll chat again in an hour, right?
Righty.
Thank you.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's get to the markets now with Makwe Masilela, Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, as always, good talking to you. You've got some news regarding Vukile property, right?
Yes, including capital appreciation, and good afternoon to you and to the listeners. Remember, capital appreciation, the guys are involved in financial services, technology and solutions, the likes of payments and software, and the robust financial performance that was driven by strong demand for their technology services, products and services. And despite sluggish economy, the payments and software divisions gained new clients and also managed to diversify their revenue sources and also increase the market share. And there was a notable growth when it comes to terminal sales, and software division also achieved good revenue growth, especially when it comes to cloud, data and digital consulting services. Hence their revenue was up nicely 19%, and the overall financial financial performance, which is EBITDA, is up 53%. Profit as headline earnings per share up 83%, with their final dividend per share up 21%. And remember, Vogele Properties, they operate in South Africa and in Spain, and back home here, 44% of their property portfolio, which is almost 35 billion, consists mainly of your urban, commuter, township, and rural malls, and that's 56% is held in Spain in more or less up market. And the South African market has been characterized by the uncertainty in the lead up to the elections, and the global environment is starting to see some green shoots as markets anticipate the start of an interest rate cutting cycle, and that is in the short to medium term. Gross property revenue up 11.8%, funds from operations per share up 6.7%, total dividend per share up 10.5%, and profits as headline earnings per share down 2.5%.
Okay, then let's get to local and global markets.
You know, there are signs of cooling U.S. labor market, and that managed to reinforce the speculation that the U.S. will be able to cut interest rates this year. And there still worries, Ashraf, though, that the economy could miss a soft landing and head for recession. So that battle between bad news is good news and bad news is really bad news is keeping investors on the edge. And the rand weakened on concerns that forming a government of national unity could include the populist groups and have to accommodate a wide range of views, giving rise to policy uncertainty. And traders think that it's going to be really tricky for them to negotiate a deal and ensure that it holds. And we saw a private payrolls report pointing to a slowdown in the U.S. labor market that will possibly allow the Fed to start cutting interest rates. The Canadian dollar fell after their central bank cut interest rates by 25 basis points, and the European Central Bank is set to cut tomorrow. And we've seen China's services activity PMI expanding at a fast pace in 10 months. And the European Union, our business activity, including the US business activity, expanded, but the UK one slowed down, and oil prices edged up from 4-month lows. As the case for a September rate cut is in the US is firming up, and we see Brent crude is up 0.9% at $77 a barrel, and the yellow metal regained its shine, and that was helped by a weaker dollar and yields. And remember, rate cuts expectations dented both the dollar and the treasury yields. Gold is up 1% at 2,340, but platinum is down 0.8% at $988. The Dow is down 0.2%, S&P is up 0.4%, DAX up 0.7%, CAC up 0.8%, FTSE up 0.1%, but the JSE is down 0.3%, with our financials down 1.8%, but our resources are up 0.7%, industrials up a mere 0.1%, and the rand weakened over 1% compared to major currencies, is now trading 18.93 to the US dollar, 24.16 to the pound, and 20.57 to the euro.
And that's it for today. We'll talk again to you not next week, no, tomorrow. Magwe Masilela, thanks for your time. Indeed, we'll have another market update coming up in about just under an hour's time, right? In fact, I've asked you for a shout-out for people who are listening in, wherever you are. So if you give us a shout-out, we'll give you the shout-out. Tell me where you are listening from, and you can do that via WhatsApp. Text is probably the best way to do just that, but you can also post on social media platforms. You'll find SAFM Radio on the X platform, Twitter, as well as on Facebook. And let me tell you another thing. You know, you can listen to us nationwide on radio 104 to 107, wherever you are. But you also have the option of listening to us via streaming live. Just go to SAFM, the website, and you'll find us streaming live. And as well, if you go onto the Facebook as well as the X platforms, you can also watch us visually. So you can watch me right now, like I'm giving you a thumbs up if you're listening right now, or watching us in this. So you have those options of knowing what goes on behind the scenes. Okay, let's get into the callers right after this.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Right, to the callers we go. We go to Mtunzi in Zululand. Mtunzi, hi.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you, sir?
Yeah, very good indeed. Right, go ahead. What's your point?
Well, my point is around food security in the context of Maputo Declaration of 2003, which was revived in 2014 as Malabo. And I was listening to another caller who was, talking about, the 10% spend in the agriculture. I don't think we're doing enough justice to the 60% of the world's arable land that is in Africa. When you're looking at our spend that we spend to buy food from other, countries in the Western, part, we spend over 40 billion. So I believe that more African countries should spend more than 10% of agriculture. And currently, we only have 4 countries that are doing that. And unfortunately, there were no implications on those countries that are not spending, enough of their national budget to agriculture. And when you look in South Africa, we spend more money building hospitals and, pumping money into the pharmaceutical industries. And unfortunately, we are not doing enough to produce food. So I believe that South Africa should start in the new administration, invest a lot in food security.
Well, I think you're spot on. It's not like they're spending more money. I think we're also underspending in education. We're also underspending even in some of the other issues you just mentioned. So there's been, like hospitals, for example, right? I think what you're saying, or what I'm suggesting, is that we have to consider just how important is the issue of food security. How can so many people go hungry every single day? But by the way, did you listen to the conversation I had with Dr. Manyewu Mutamba?
Yes.
Okay, because, there's a podcast available of that if you just go to the website to listen or re-listen. But you're spot on. Food security, hunger, and the lack of eliminating hunger, I think it must be an absolute priority in the 7th administration. Mtunzi, thanks for that call. Much appreciated. Let's get to Randfontein now. Impo's on the line. Of course, talking about the big issue that drives the national pulse right now, coalitions. Impo, go ahead. Impo, hello.
How are you?
Yeah,
How are
good.
you?
Go ahead, Impo. Yeah.
Yes, it's not. It's Marcus from Limpopo, Lesfontein.
Sorry, are you saying we got the name wrong? Is it
Yes,
is it
it's
Marcus?
Marcus.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
we made a coalition from Limpopo to Randfontein, and that's what happens with coalitions. We get all mixed up. But okay.
Yes, it's because of coalition, It's because of coalition.
All right, Marcus, what's your point?
If you want to get to a new ruling party,
yeah,
the only way to get there is by coalition government, because you want to test who is better than who. You cannot say this one is bad, even if he didn't ever be a government, he didn't ever govern. If a party, it wasn't ever governed and ruling a country, you cannot say this party is not good, this one is better than this one. You cannot compare without testing it. You need to test.
Well, I agree with you. And there's also parties that have governed for a long time and they make a mess of things. And not just in our country, in many countries in the world, okay? So there's no guarantee either way. Lack of experience doesn't mean that you can't deliver, and experience doesn't mean you can deliver, if you can get my point.
Yes,
Thanks for that.
You need to test. Yes, you need to test someone else. You need to go for somebody else to see different. Thereafter, then you can compare to say this one is better than this one. Okay. After testing.
All right. Thanks for that, Marcus. Let's see what happens around our coalitions.
Yeah.
I'll pick out some voice notes as well, and a lot of the voice notes refers to the resignation of Zizi Kodwa as South Africa's Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. I think Zizi Kodwa did a very good thing by resigning, just like Mapisa Ngagula, the former speaker. You see, this will pave the way for others that are implicated in serious state capture allegations to follow suit. We must applaud our justice system as well, and not only focus on the negativities like the rigged elections. We must give credit where credit is due. This is a good thing. Clean-up operation for the new government that is on the wings. It's Thabo Manyige here.
Okay, thanks for that, Thabo. You know, the ANC in particular has a voluntary step-aside policy, but resignation is not step-aside. It's actually much deeper in terms of stepping aside as the minister. Now, whether he's resigned from the ANC is another question, but here's another thought from a caller, and I love the fact that we get callers who say the most, thought-provoking things.
Ashraf, it's Zinto from Gqeberha. If Ziz is really resigning genuinely, he must resign in the list of parliament. Then I would take him as someone who is stepping aside and really resigning. This is just sensations. He's trying to look good. He must resign there. Then I will believe that he's really resigning. Thank you very much.
Okay, just trying to look good. That's another opinion, right? He should resign even standing in Parliament. Of course, there's a new Parliament that'll be set up soon. Let's see what happens there, right? Here's another.
Afternoon, Ashraf. I'm so patriotic to my country that I love that fact dearly. Now I will be watching the party I voted for. If it's going to come and stand with the very same man who banned the flag, trying to put a point across and say, I must be patriotic to that, then I'm going to have a problem. Thank you, Voyan and Orange.
Okay, love your country. I certainly love my country too, and I tell you what, it breaks my heart when we as a country mess up and, let's call us move from like championship winning country to like a mid-table relegation threatened country, if you get my point, right? Here's another one about, politicians.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ashraf is for the tracker. Mr. Ashraf, these politicians, they will come back. Remember Mduduzi Manana, remember Malusi Gigaba, where are they now? Remember even the former president, remember the story of Ukwezi, but still people are cheering for them. They will still come back, Mr. Ashraf, they will come back.
I tell you what, nobody reflects the national pulse more than our truck driver, because he picks up on things that are really, really matter. Okay, let's and here's another just quick comment. Ashraf, the chickens are coming home to roost. The ANC crooks are falling on their swords one by one. Nothing lasts forever. There we are. That's from Sewani JC Kaunda in Musina, right? Okay, let's leave it at that. We're going to pick up another important issue that was a big issue let me say two things quickly. First of all, there's an SACP press conference, and we'll certainly pick up on what's come out of that press conference later on. We must talk about it. And then, relating to the Zizi Kodwa story, we've had one conversation already on that issue earlier on. You can listen to the podcast right away, but we'll then get another take on that and maybe some of the issues that you've just asked. What about resigning from Parliament or the ANC? Or is that premature? And what about the implications for the ANC? But think about that right now. To the elections, amongst the big issues were the issues of youth in South Africa and the issues of jobs and unemployment and joblessness. So Crystal Duncan-Williams is the Youth Capital Project lead, and they have an interesting take in terms of what's come through in terms of manifestos and what's likely to happen thereafter. So Crystal, appreciate your time. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thanks so much, Ashraf. Thanks for having me.
Much appreciated. Right. So let's talk about this. First of all, in terms of, what you've seen from the different political parties. I don't want to go through their manifestos, or not anymore, right? But did you get a sense that they are serious about carving out a plan to cut down unemployment among South Africa's youth?
I think a detailed plan was in short supply. The Western Cape, through the DA government, has a growth for job strategy, but that was provincially specific. Rise Mzansi came out with sort of economic recovery plan. I think it was called a week or two before elections. But those were the only kind of plans that I was aware of in the lead up to elections. There were lots of grand promises made about numbers of jobs being created, but very little discussion generally across all political parties on the how. And if this hasn't managed to be accomplished in the last almost 20 years, how are you going to do this? What are you going to do differently? And I think that's a key question as we head into these coalition talks and we come out in sort of a new era of our democracy where political parties are going to have a clear plan on these big issues, healthcare, education, employment. And if we aren't clear on what that plan is up front, I think we're going to see very little traction again in the next 5 years because the how is just not clear.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that, most of the parties, it was never like the main topic, and it should be the main topic, right? Having said that, your organization, Youth Capital, you've done a survey or gained consensus from 180 people and many of them activists, and you've got some feedback from them in terms of carving a pathway forward, right? Tell me about that.
Yes, so, between Feb and April, we traveled to 6 of the 9 provinces and spoke to, as you say, over 180 individuals from various organizations. And the general consensus is that people are optimistic and people believe that there's a role to play for young people and that we are missing out on the potential of young people. And everybody can agree that employment is not just about jobs, and I think that that's great. And from that, we've got 3 kind of focus areas that we are going to be keeping an eye on in the next 5 years. And that's, that young people must have a valuable first work experience, namely through public employment programs that work for young people and their communities. That young people need 21st century workplace skills, and that we need to create an environment where small and medium businesses can thrive. And, under each of those points, there's a few key areas we're going to be focusing on. But the general consensus was that these kind of feel like things that can actually be done. We're not proposing massive changes, but rather, a laser focus on some key issues that cut across both the supply and demand side that might see us chip away at those 9 million young people who are not in employment, education or training.
Well, I think it's so important you've punctuated the need for, 21st century workplace skills compared to, the 20th century workplace skills. What are those skills? And, is it part of any form of training that's taking place in schools or just higher education before they get to work?
No, I think a big disconnect, and this is one of the things we kind of highlight in our advocacy plan, which you can find on our website as our latest report, is that a lot of these sort of upskilling programs are led by government, CETA, the Department of Higher Education and Training, and industry is not really forefronting these pathways. And we often hear from people in TVET systems that the equipment's outdated, lecturers have no industry experience, they actually just kind of studied and went into lecture, being lecturers themselves. And so what we're finding is young people are going into these sort of existing skilling pathways, expecting to come out with valuable skills that the labor market values, and that's just not happening. And so what we really need is for industry bodies to take center stage and say, what are the skills? Because we don't necessarily need a 3-year degree, but we need key skills, and those are technical skills that need to be trained by professionals, but then also the soft skills, which I think is what you're alluding to. We don't really see that being taught even at basic education level. We have, the pilot through the general education certificate. There's some part of that pilot that some sort of government affiliation or organizations are running, looking at things like resilience, teamwork, these kind of softer skills that are going to be really necessary as we move into a more digital
very
age.
much so, yeah. In fact, we'll have another take of artificial intelligence conversations coming up around 5:20, so you may want to listen to that, right? So then what about entry points into the labor market? I mean, are there specific gateways to ensure that more people can enter the labor market? Quick, because you always look at shortcuts. Yeah. I mean, in anything, you travel from, Durban to Cape Town, you want to find a shortcut, not a long journey.
Exactly. What so obviously public employment programs that are done well have a place, but they're short term. What we need is for employers to value that work experience, right? So that work experience needs to translate into real skills that employers say, you came through as a teaching assistant, and we know that means you have skills X, Y, and Z, and those are skills that we value. And that kind of connection is missing. I think those programs exist, but industry and employees don't see that value. And if we can connect those two, then that's a shortcut. And those programs are already being funded and have already got a footprint in communities. So I think that's an easy win. And then the other one, as I said, small and medium businesses are the perfect place for young people to get work experience in their chosen field and to become entrepreneurs themselves. What better place to learn to become entrepreneurs than to have experience from small businesses? And so we really need to support small businesses with things like the employment tax incentives and existing incentives that we know aren't working at the moment. How do we make them work for small, medium businesses better than they have in the past?
So what's your opinion on the youth employment services? Yes, in terms of, getting people to get paid by a third-party company, but getting more people working, for 1 year.
Yeah, so I think, again, the problem there is what we find is that corporates are paying for these learnerships, but we seldom see the young people actually benefit from the network of a private company. So young people through Yes Learnerships are being placed within civil society and within existing NGOs, which gives them a range of experience. But the social network aspect, which can really be the game changer when you talk about access to opportunities, is missing, I think, in the YES program, and it's something that could be done a bit better. Also, we've spoken to YES about this before, how to work with small businesses, because small businesses are more likely to allow young people in and actually have that hands-on training within the small business environment and not just sort of outsource to civil society to fulfill that 1 year learnership. And so I think these are some ways in which the program can have bigger impact.
Okay, well, feel free, you got that report view. Feel free to tag us, myself, as well as SFM Radio. We'll certainly share that if you tag us on the Twitter X platform. Perfect. Crystal Duncan-Williams, Youth Capital Project Lead. As far as, thank you for your time. Let's get to other issues. The ANC's issues just won't go away.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Pito here in Harriswater. Ashraf, if the NPA will start doing their job without fear and favor, who's going to remain in the ANC, Mar? Just asking. Thank you.
You're not just asking, you're really asking who is going to remain in the ANC. There's another comment. Zizi Kodwar did well, but the ANC must resign too. And then, good afternoon, brothers and sisters. We can't remain as objects of charity in Africa. Africa is rich and our resources are being looted by these unscrupulous foreign investors. Yes, the DA must tell us how they're going to vet good and bad investors. We don't want Western countries to tell us how they must loot our resources using our political leaders. A government of national unit, I think it says, yeah, that's from Nkululeko. But the reality is not just the DA that has foreign investors. Even the ruling party has done that all the years. So let's not think it's an either or, isn't it? Okay, it's time. It's 5 o'clock. So in the hot seat, manning the news desk is Greg Host. Let's get to him.
Thank you and good afternoon to you, Ashraf. In this news update, Sibanye mine workers end their sit-in and commemorating the D-Day landings. Good day. The last remaining 31 mine workers who staged a sit-in at Sibanye-Stillwater's Kweze shaft in Rustenburg in the northwest have resurfaced. They say they will continue to stage a protest at the mine. Aggrieved workers have been underground since Monday over the proposed employee share scheme for the company's Kroondal mine employees. However, Sibanye-Stillwater maintains that discussions between the company and unions regarding the details of the proposed Kroondal scheme are ongoing. The ANC says it's met with at least 6 political parties with a view of forming a coalition government or a government of national unity at national and provincial level. The parties include the DA, EFF, IFP, NFP and PA. However, ANC spokesperson Mahlengi Bengu-Mutsiri says they haven't made any headway with the MK party, but will continue to engage with them.
We have been meeting with all parties that are keen to contribute ideas on how we can collectively move our country forward. The national officials reported to the National Working Committee that the ANC has repeatedly reached out to the MK party for an engagement meeting with no positive response. Our door remains open as we continue to reach out to every party that is keen to contribute positively to moving our country forward.
The Border Management Authorities arrested 25 travellers for contravention of the Immigration Act at Johannesburg's OR Tambo International Airport. Officials conducted a routine intelligence-driven operation and monitored flights from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Ghana and Nigeria. 13 Bangladeshis and 3 Pakistanis were found in possession of fake visas, while 1 Bangladeshi, a Nigerian, 3 Pakistanis and 4 Ghana nationals failed to meet the relevant entry requirements. Border Management Authority spokesperson Meme Mokhodzi.
OR Tambo International Airport has been a target with various travelers attempting to enter the country illegally. This past Sunday on the 2nd of June, 5 more Bangladeshis and 5 Ethiopians were intercepted in collaboration with the airport's company South Africa. The BMA has adopted a zero-tolerance approach to criminal or unlawful behavior at all ports of entry.
Flood victims in East London and the Eastern Cape say they're still waiting to get assistance from governments after they were left displaced by the recent floods. The residents allege that instead of offering aid, their ward councillor lashed out at them for erecting shacks in a low-lying area prone to flooding. They also claim that none of the municipal authorities have visited their area. Resident Nansikolelo Selani.
We didn't get anything. We didn't get not even a blanket or something. We heard that there were people who were giving people some other stuff like food parcel and stuff, but they didn't come to this area of ours.
Meanwhile, the Buffalo City Metro spokesperson Samkela Ngwenya has called on those who haven't received assistance to come forward.
As much as we do want to reiterate that people have built on a land that is not suitable for building, for floods. However, it's a very sensitive period of time to be saying that right now. What is important right now is that we cater for our people and we make sure that we take care of their needs. So we think it's unfortunate if there's such reports that there's a councillor that has said such. We are going to be engaging with those people and the councillor involved, and I'm sure we're going to get to an amicable solution. So far, we think we've done well, but we can see that this is going to be an ongoing issue. So we're making that appeal for people to come and assist us.
The US President Joe Biden's in France to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the D-Day landings during the Second World War. He'll attend the main ceremony tomorrow along with the French President, King Charles and Canada's Prime Minister. Some 200 surviving veterans are expected, most of them in their 90s, some aged over 100. King Charles paid tribute to those who took part in the landings at an event in Portsmouth.
Those who gathered here in Portsmouth would never forget the sight. It was by far the largest military fleet the world has ever known. Yet all knew that both victory and failure were possible, and none could know their fate.
Top story, the last remaining 31 mine workers who staged a sit-in at Sibanye-Stillwater's Kwezi shaft in Rustenburg in the northwest have now resurfaced. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khus.
Coming up in your sports this hour, India win the toss and elect to bowl first against Ireland in the T20 World Cup. And we keep up to date with the PSL promotion relegation battle. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown Interchange. The M1 northbound in Melrose is queuing towards Colette Drive exit. The N14 eastbound in Diepsloot has delays towards the R114 Diepsloot exit. In Bedfordview, the N12 eastbound has a stationary vehicle after Spaghetti Junction, and the N3 in both ways is queuing on the link to the N12 east at Gululi's Interchange. In KZN, the M4 southbound is queuing towards the N2 highway exit. The N2 southbound also has a crash reported after Mgeni Road that's causing delays. In Cape Town, Chapman's Peak Drive is closed. That's due to heavy rain. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Plattekloof Hill. The N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive southbound is slow moving towards Voortrekker Road, and Victoria Road outbound is slow moving through Woodstock. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
What for you drives the National Pulse today? You can certainly let me know. I'll tell you what, given Makusha, let me give him a shout out from Pretoria. Given always tweets the fact that wherever he's from every single day. So he certainly is one of those that drives the National Pulse. We're talking about Zizi Kodwa, SACP, just had a press conference. We'll talk about that as well. And of course, continuous conversation regarding the nature of a potential coalition or a government of national unity or something or the other that needs to stick for South Africa to form a government in just over a week's time, in fact, and to a government that can lead and serve all at the same time. Right. We'll talk about, we spoke about jobs early on. We'll have, as part of our innovation hub, we'll talk another round of artificial intelligence with Nez Ibrahim about using, certainly for young people, how to be more productive using artificial intelligence. Goodness, young or old, I certainly want to know all about that too. Right. Okay, but let's get to the issue of Zizi Kodwa resigning and get another take on that issue with the advocate Stephanie Fick, who's the Outer Executive Director for Accountability and Public Governance Division. Advocate Fick, Stephanie, good chatting to you as always. Hi.
Good afternoon. It's only my pleasure.
Thank you. Right. What's your take, firstly, on Zizi Kodwa resigning as the South African Minister for Sports, Arts and Culture?
Well, I think it's a good move. I think even his party has indicated that once someone is, appears in court, that then certain rules come into play, and that it's a good thing that he resigned. I think, if you really think about it, how long did it take? How long did it take for this to happen? And that sometimes the wheels of justice are just not turning fast enough, and that one would have liked to have seen other types of accountability, not just, the criminal justice system.
What sort of accountability are you referring to?
In other words, I think sometimes we are fixated on the fact that, if I'm not appearing in court or found guilty, then, nothing else is supposed to happen. So what about ethical leadership? What about disciplinary hearings, etc.? So ideally, one would expect, for example, the party to look at the allegations. I mean, the State Capture Commission went out of their way to do the investigations and to, on a different level, investigate these types of complaints and making sure that people in positions are ethical leaders. That is what this country needs at the moment.
Okay, now, this is a good example because this was brought up at the Zondo Commission, but the problem with your point about allegations, I mean, anybody can make allegations about anybody. And it doesn't mean simply on the basis of allegations the person's guilty. And if you step aside or resign merely because of allegations, well, you could have hundreds of people out of positions every single day, and that can be manipulated simply to get people out of positions.
No. Of course, I hear you. That's why, for example, if you think about you are an employer, and then you get complaints about one of your employees that has stolen money. Now, you may react on that, but as an employer, you can't just fire all your employees. You need to go through a process. And part of that process is, for example, a disciplinary hearing that says, bring me the evidence. I'm going to get, for example, an objective a person that will deal with the disciplinary hearing, and I will listen to the allegations. Because in terms of disciplinaries, normally, there's some policies and stuff that certain actions may contravene certain policies. So what I'm advocating for is a trial, a criminal trial. The state has to show beyond a reasonable doubt that you are guilty of an offense. But sometimes people's actions may not be a crime, because although in this instance the allegation is, but may not necessarily go to the point of a crime being committed. But they have contravened policies. Their behavior is contrary to what you in your company want to accomplish. And then you can fire someone without someone being guilty of an offense necessarily. And we have, I think in this country, there's a tendency to say that I'm innocent until proven guilty. So take me to court, and if I'm found guilty, then only something will happen. We must remember that only once you are an accused, that constitutional right comes into play. So a normal person, you don't have that right because you are not an accused. You don't necessarily have to be an accused person to, be held to account for example, unethical behavior.
Okay. Regarding Zizi Kodwa, just give us a quick backstory in terms of what the allegations are.
So I think that there were quite a few, but I think this one specifically relates to the state capture investigations. So there was a contract that because CETA, who is obviously the person dealing with IT in government, couldn't deal with a contract. So it was a contract of 360 million, so that went out on tender. And apparently EOH was then disqualified. And the allegation is that the McKay, a co-accused, then phoned Mr. Kodwa, and all of a sudden that tender was cancelled, and R1 million, for example, was paid over to Mr. Kodwa. Now, Mr. Kodwa, during State Capture Commission, said, but I was in financial difficulty. What breaks my heart is that he states he got that $1 million because he was in financial difficulties. You know what he did apparently with the money? Buy himself a Jeep for 860,000 because the bank wouldn't loan him the money. So that is, in a nutshell, the allegation. So if you look high level, it is about interfering with the procurement system and making sure that EOH, for example, gets business. I know that EOH did a lot of business with SAFA as well. So that's why EOH was also in a bit of trouble.
Okay. So in this case, he's resigned as a minister. He didn't step aside as per the ANC rules. You see anything different there?
There's no sort of indication that in terms of the ANC, he's out of the party. He's not an MP. I don't know if he's going to remain as an MP because then obviously Parliament can also hold them to account. But if they're no longer MPs, then that's impossible. I do think, and it's not just for the ANC. In this example, it's an ANC member. But all political parties, but also oversight bodies, really need to start taking accountability seriously, not victimizing people, like you said, because people, unfortunately, may use that, but where there's enough evidence on the balance of probabilities that people are held to accountable. For example, that Mr. Kodwa is held accountable in the ANC as well.
Okay, so now in terms of the legal case, that will start whenever it does. That'll take a long while, right? But already, how powerful is this statement in terms of the state of South Africa and its dealings with high-powered, high-ranking politicians?
I think it does give, South Africa a little bit of hope that, the high-ranking individuals is not getting away with it. We have to take into account that this happened, I think the allegations is dated 2015. It's nearly 10 years ago. And we need to work on the turnaround time. And it is really sad that, it took the State Capture Commission and then some time in order for the NPA to prosecute. But here we are. And I do think that there's light at the end of the tunnel that we are starting to see. That doesn't matter who you are. We are all equal in front of the law, and that, our system allows you to defend yourself. He's now an accused, so he's got a right to a fair trial, and if he's found guilty, that he will be sentenced accordingly, and if he's found not guilty, that is the system.
Okay, and then he can come back, of course, right? Let's leave it at that. Advocate Stephanie Fick, Outer Executive Director for Accountability and Public Governance Divisions. What do you make of that conversation? You may want to add to that, questions answered, not answered, and for you, some of the powerful messaging that's come through from that one, not just to the ANC or the ruling party, but to all politicians. What for you has emerged out of this thread or this trend that started with the Speaker in Parliament as well fairly recently? You know that, right? As always, you can connect. You should know the numbers. Just save them permanently to call in 086 000 2032. WhatsApp, you have an option of a text or voice note format, 0614 104 107. And as always, on all those formats rather, if you want to give us a shout out where you are from, well, I'll give you a shout out as well. And I hope you're enjoying what you're listening to here on the National Pulse. Okay, Mike in Newlands has the thought. Hi, Mike.
Yeah, hello, Ashraf. Thanks for taking my call. I just want to comment on Zizi Kodwa. I'm not the one caller said that he'd done the right thing by resigning, which I certainly agree with. But, I think he should have done it at the time. The circumstances in which he was accused of taking this money were very strange. He went out and bought a brand new Jeep over R1 million. And I just felt, it was just an ugly, unpleasant situation with so much poverty and crime in our country. He should have resigned right there and then. But more than that, the ANC should have actually fired him. But you know what I do find strange, and I find a little sympathy for it? It is only 1.3 million. Mapisa and Kukula is up for 3.6 million. But both of them are going to court, including our ex-president. So we've got three ANC guys lined up for court. But the one person who seems to have got away with everything is Panyaza Lusufi, because he walked off with 432 million, and nobody went to court. He got found not guilty. Not 1 rand was ever recovered and nothing's been done, which makes me realize that it's the way you play the game. if you're going to steal the state's money, you need to be clever about it. And I don't think those two individuals have got it right.
Well, I mean, I don't know. So we can't say now the Sufi has stolen it, because clearly it hasn't gone to this level of what you said. He hasn't appeared in court. He hasn't been charged, so we can't say that. Having said that, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and maybe it's not so much about the values, but some things are not as clear-cut wrong or clear-cut right, and I think you need to understand that. I mean,
sure,
that's
absolutely.
True.
I take your point, Ashraf. I mean, the thing is, Paddy Sufi, he was found not guilty.
Yeah.
So I'm not suggesting he took the money, but the point is, the money disappeared. Somebody's got 432 million, or a group of people, but not one of them has been convicted, and not 1 rand has been found, which just makes me wonder why poor old Zizi Kodwa and Mapisa Kukula are going to court. They must be wondering what on earth they've done wrong.
Okay, well, we'll follow that story. Thanks for that call, Mike, in Newlands. Let's get another thought, predictably, on the elections, right? That's not going to go away. Mzwandile in the Eastern Cape. Hi.
Yeah, hi, Ashraf. Before I deal with the IEC matter, can I just also respond to the Zizi Kodwa?
Yeah, very, very quickly. Go ahead, yes.
My friend, the first person who actually should have resigned is the president himself. I mean, this is a man with allegations of pala where hardcore foreign currency was, what is that discovered in? Shouldn't he have been the first one to lead by example? Let's be frank there, man. Let's not have double standards. Let's first deal with him before we deal with the underlings. Then the second point I want to make, Ashraf, is just to register our dismay at how you guys in the media have been handling this coalition talks. Because this entire week till now, we've been debating the issue of a possible DA or ANC coalition. The ANC has not taken any position or gone to any public platform to say that they are considering having a coalition with the DA. So why are you guys making us to eat that thing the entire week? I mean, there are so many other potential parties that we could have been engaged.
No, but Mzwandile, let's keep the two things apart. One, Ramaphosa, your point made, well taken. Let's see what happens there. On the other part about the you guys, I mean, I can only talk about us speaking on this show, okay? We've spoken to people. It's been analysts who's given options, including, for example, today, Cheryl Carolus on the SFM Sunrise show, not as an analyst, I mean, she's an ANC person, saying the ANC and the DA needs to work together. So often it's an analyst or it's somebody within who already has a public profile who's voiced an opinion. I don't think it's the media who said that the ANC and the DA themselves must get together and forget the rest. In fact, we've left it open.
I get that, but what I'm saying is then in that case, then yourselves to take the responsibility of balancing the narrative and the views. If you are seeing that too much airtime is being given to one narrative instead of looking at your coalition options in a balanced manner, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So okay. Then the last point I want to make, Ashraf, which is very important, and I feel the IEC should have presented the results in a manner that is more detailed. Let me explain what I mean by that.
All right, you got 30 seconds, right? Please, quickly.
If we know that the voters, let's say there are 5 million of them who voted on the day, I'm sure that we also know what are the demographics of those voters. The point I'm trying to make here, Ashraf, is that the narrative we should be driving is nearly 80% of South Africa did not vote for the DA. Therefore, the DA should not be the first, first right of refusal. When it comes to the coalition.
All right. We're gonna go because we need to get to a break, as I've told you, but I hear what you're saying. I think we've been pretty balanced. I'm talking of this show in terms of the different people we've spoken to and some people we've reached out to and they're not talking. Otherwise, we've always tried to do just that. And I have my opinion, you have yours. But realistically, to consider the ANC and the DA and the top four as part of a coalition, it's not unreasonable to say, are you guys going to be working together?
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megalitres of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand water beacons so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
So, a lady from Air Officini just turned 55, and although I'm still a spring chicken, there's a part of me that envies her, especially since she now qualifies for a Nedbank Electronic Optimum Plus account with capital guaranteed. Talk about FOMI, huh, voice man?
If you mean FOMO, then definitely boss man. And she can earn up to 12.65% interest. Anyone over 55 can open theirs via the Nedbank Money app. Visit our website for more information. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credits provider. T's and C's apply.
Weeknights on S3 are all about winning, and winning big with Wheel of Fortune. For the first time in South Africa, Wheel of Fortune is on S3, Monday to Friday at 7:30 p.m, where Rory Sang has South Africans locked into the world of word puzzles. Watch contestants spin the wheel to stand a chance of walking away with 100,000 Rand, or a car valued at over 500,000 Rand. You can also be part of the show and win big. To be part of the show, log on to wheeloffortunesa.tv and let the wheel decide your fate. Channel your inner wordsmith with Wheel of Fortune SA on S3. Open up.
You are listening to the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda.
So, two things of importance. One is, yesterday we spoke about artificial intelligence and its importance to all things that we do in the country. And then earlier on, we chatted to Crystal Duncan-Williams from the Youth Capital Project, specifically about young people and what they need to do to get ahead in their lives, right? And certainly with regard to jobs. So we thought the conversation with Nez Ibrahim right now, who's the founder of Nez Consulting International, I think is appropriate considering the AI conversation yesterday, because Nez wants to talk about productivity, right, using AI tools. So Nez, good chatting to you, and thanks for joining us on the National Pulse.
Thanks for the opportunity, Ashraf. It's lovely to join you on the show.
Thank you. Now, we know that productivity is critically important. You have particular thoughts around using tools that will what? Get us more productive? Tell us more.
Get us more productive indeed. And so the conversation flows nicely from you talked a broad overview of AI yesterday. If a business is thinking about using artificial intelligence tools for productivity in a business, there's a particular way to think about it. The first step is to think around what size of business you are. Now, size of business may not necessarily impact what you may think around the tools. We're all thinking around tools. But typically, a business, large or small, is using an ecosystem or a platform to manage the entire output of the business from a process point of view, right? And if you think around, I'll take government as an example. Government is using Microsoft as their primary output for managing all of their services at the back end. Mm-hmm. Emails, team meetings, any other of the applications that Microsoft provides within that ecosystem for a government department to run or for a business unit to run, as an example.
Right.
And those could be forms, PowerPoint, Word. I think we get the idea of what that ecosystem looks like. But when you understand then the ecosystem that you're working in, typically, and this is where the person who's responsible for bringing in any IT solutioning into the business is trying to think, well, if I've been using these tools for such a long time to get people to communicate with one another, to provide a service, or to understand how we are distributing any kind of information that we have, then what is the AI component of this tool now going to mean for my business? And I'll give you an example, Ashraf. MasterCard as an example, it's MasterCard's global. Their head of HR recently, and this is a month ago, at a global tech conference, announced that they had only introduced Copilot, which is an offering from Microsoft, and everyone would be familiar with it at this point, seeing it across the board. Copilot is Microsoft's AI large language model tool that also generates a lot of content. And so he said that they had just piloted it in the organization through their Teams application, which is a Microsoft application, right, to meet. Everyone knows about Teams. You get on. It now has capabilities to record the meeting, provide a transcript, give you actions, and identify who's on the call as a base level use of what AI looks like in productivity. Meaning, you don't need a person to be sitting there taking minutes anymore. It's done with your AI assistant as an integration into the tool.
Because, I mean, that's the other part. One thing is, let's say you're using, one-to-one, person-to-person meetings or on Zoom or whichever platform, right? Yes, you still have to transcribe. You're saying even the transcriptions can be done. In fact, we can do the same thing with the show here, just transcribe the entire show. I mean, that's what you're saying, right?
And this is exactly it. And a lot of people have started to use it. I know of a CEO of a leading local bank who's on his own discovered what would be Otter.ai, which is a transcription tool. Many people who are listening may be familiar with that and using it already. If you join a call, whether it's Google Meet, Zoom, I know Amazon Web Services uses Chime, then you've got Microsoft Teams, you would see automatically not just the person or Ashraf joining, you would see Ashraf's Otter.ai joining. Or it would be Ashraf's Read.ai is joining.
Okay.
You wonder what is going on here. But it's actually the AI assistant that you have chosen to join any meeting you're going into, regardless of the platform, that will be then capturing these notes. And at the end of the meeting, as soon as you're done, leave meeting or stop session, it will then email you a copy of the minutes of the meeting.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, feel free to tag us with all the information you've just mentioned, although we'll have it up as a podcast as well, right? But here's the thought then. Small business, and I'm talking particularly small businesses, right? Or, one-off entrepreneurs, right? So is there a need for them to pay attention to the advances of AI, or is it the case of it's something at a higher level for them, let others worry about it?
Yeah, it's a great question you've asked. Everyone will worry about what the impact of AI will look like in your business. And the two parts that are the immediate or easiest ways to start understanding how it can impact your business is through productivity or through marketing. The productivity component is, and we're doing this currently with a customer, including in our own businesses, how do we make a process of delivering a service to a customer? So we want to sell a digital marketing package to a customer. If they are onboarding with us, or if any industry, financial services, healthcare, education, agriculture, whatever the administrative component around a process is, that is where you can start to see the touch points. And you can use the free tools, Ashraf. There's Calendly for automatic calendar appointments. You would integrate that into Google, which Google Meet or any of the conferencing tools that we've mentioned previously, and you further integrate that into something that will help you to take minutes. Already, you've cut down on the amount of hours spent just on administrative stuff and just look at the stuff that you need to deliver.
Let's leave it at that. It's mind-boggling. Well, as I said, feel free to just tweet out all those thoughts that you have, and we can certainly share that as well. I mean, it does tell me just now that probably number one priority for me is go for a tutorial, how to maximize the use of AI in your entire life. Nez Ibrahim, thanks for your time. Much appreciated from Nez Consulting. There you are. AI. We'll certainly focus a lot on AI innovation and other marketing tools on the shows here, because that's just critically important to your personal and your business growth. Let's get the news headlines now. It's 5:30 with Greg.
Thank you again, Ashraf. In the headlines, the ANC's been lauded for conceding defeat and accepting the outcome of the recently concluded elections. One of the country's largest short-term insurers, Santam, says it's seen an increase in the number of insurance claims from the Eastern Cape following the recent floods. And the last remaining 31 mine workers who staged a sit-in at Sibanye-Stillwater's Kwezi shaft in the northwest have now resurfaced. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 southbound is queuing towards Geldenhuys interchange. The N1 northbound in Midrand is slow moving towards Samrand Road exit, and Eskom Pahleli Drive northbound in Pretoria has delays towards Mood Street. In KZN, the M4 southbound queuing towards the N2 highway exit, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction, and the N3 eastbound in Pinetown as a crash reported just before the M7 highway exit, and that's causing some delays. In the Eastern Cape, the R61 has a road collapse incident reported between Tata and Port St. John's with stop-go controls at 2 locations. Trucks are prohibited. Flooding, debris, washaway obstructions flowing heavy rains in that Kariga area, so you're asked to proceed with caution throughout that region. The N2 southbound has sea debris on the carriageway between John Talent Road and the M4 Settlers Way exit. You're asked to expect delays there. In Cape Town, the N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend. The M5 southbound is slow moving towards Racecourse Road exit. The M3 southbound is slow moving towards Rhodes Drive, and the R300 southbound is queuing towards Stock Road exit. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Tuming Kapele.
Right, are we going to talk sport?
Yes.
Like a countdown, 1, 2, 3. So to me.
All right, let's start things off with T20. India won the toss and they elected to bowl first against Ireland. And just looking at how Ireland are doing currently, they're sitting on 50-8. So a bit in trouble after 11 overs. It'll be interesting to see how this one ends. But India are eager to end their trophy drought, which is now in its 10th year. In football, Richards Bay started the PSL promotion relegation playoffs with a 1-0 win over Amatax. Somalia Nzudwana scored the only goal on the match, and as things stand, they top the relegation promotion table with 3 points, level on points with Amatax and Baroka at the bottom. In the meantime, as Bafana head coach Hugo Bruce has reiterated that his target in the next two 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers against Nigeria and Zimbabwe is for 4 points. Bafana plays Nigeria in Uyo on Friday and returns for their fourth game in Group C against Zimbabwe in Bloemfontein next Tuesday.
Qualifiers for World Cup, everybody knows that every one of us wants to go and wants to be qualified for the World Cup in 26, but we are in front of two very tough games. First of all, Nigeria, finalist AFCON, players who are playing in the best competitions in Europe. At the other side, we saw also what we can do against them on AFCON. If we had a little bit luck on our side, we were in the final and not Nigeria. I think we were the best team in the semi-finals. We could have won that, so we don't have to be afraid. The other game against Zimbabwe is different, and a game between neighbors. I think that Zimbabwe, after the ban of AFCON last year, they have another team with another coach. From that side, it will be a tough game, but our goal has to be at least 4-6. I don't want to lose any of those two games. I want to win one, and I want to have a draw. That means 4-6, we will stay in the race for qualifying, for the World Cup. And that has to be our goal for the next two games.
In rugby, Nizam Khan says that the Bulls are bracing for all-out attack when Benetton arrive at Loftus Versfeld on Saturday. Jake White's Chargers host Benetton in a Vodacom URC quarter-final this week, and victory for the Herd will book the venue for semi-finals next week. Then in motorsport, six-time MotoGP world champion Marc Marquez will join Ducati factory team in 2025 and team up with reigning champion Francesco Bagnaia. Marquez, who currently rides for Ducati's satellite team, which he joined at the start of this year after 11 seasons at Honda, will replace the Italian Enea on a 2-year contract. Ending things off with the business of sports, the NBA is close to signing new rights deals, which will see basketball supporters stream games on Disney, Amazon, and NBC. This deal is reportedly bringing in around $76 billion, around 1.4 trillion rand over the next 11 years. On that note, it is a wrap from my side. I'll have more in
just a quick
tomorrow.
So you got this tomorrow, of course, right?
Yeah,
it's
tomorrow.
not the weekend as yet, right?
Yes.
So that rugby, quarterfinal coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's important. Yeah.
Very, very important. Very important. I'm looking forward to them making it for the semis. They've been playing well.
And I think you mentioned Nizam Khan. I think he was injured for a while or so. So these guys, well, rugby, it's normal, isn't it? You get injured. In fact, how often do you know rugby players who can survive a season without getting injured? Just think about that. But we'll talk tomorrow. Thanks for that, Tumi.
Alrighty, Gina Tumi Kapele, Mudimukyo.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, let's get to the facts and figures you can count on with the MoneyWeb market update. Jimmy, as always, go ahead.
Good evening, Ashraf. Good evening, Dumi, and good evening to the listeners. We've got quite the show lineup today. We've had some results come through. We've spoken, we had results from the Vukile Property Fund come through today. We're also going to be chatting to Lawrence Rapp, the CEO of Vukile, as part of our executive lounge today. So we're going to do a double bill there, get to know the CEO, but also touch on the results as well. And then we're going to have a couple of other results-related conversations with the team at Capital Appreciation. I'm going to speak to their chief financial officer. They saw revenues up 19%. So the business obviously doing well from that perspective. We're also going to speak to Siobhan Redford from Rand Merchant Bank around that business sentiment indicator that gets put out by Rand Merchant Bank. It seems that sentiment was up ahead of the elections, but we'll have to look and see where it stands now. We know that business activity came through negatively on Monday's PMI data reading. So we're going to look at that, try and unpack that and see where we stand at the moment, where the business sector is seeing South Africa in terms of recovery, in terms of post-election South Africa, and how we move forward. And then we've got a conversation with Denker Capital around 91's results. I want to get a banking expert on this, and Koki Koeman is one of the best banking experts in our local markets and international markets as well. Looks very deeply at local and international banks, and 91 has reached 3 trillion rand in assets under management. Quite the milestone there. We might even have a conversation with Hendrik du Toit, the CEO and founder, at a later stage around how the business got to the size that it got to. But before we get to all of those lovely stories, the markets have had a weird kind of day. It's been an up and down day depending on which side of the markets you've been looking at. I'll start with Asian markets as they were trading first throughout the day. Sydney was up about 1/3%, with the Nikkei in Tokyo down almost a full percent. Mainland China almost a full percent as well, down 0.8% there. Hong Kong was down about 0.1%. It was all green from there on for European markets and US markets, and almost for South African markets. So European markets, the CAC 40 in France was up 0.8%, DAX in Germany up 0.93% on the day, and the FTSE up 1/3% in London. In US markets, currently they are still trading, of course. S&P up 0.7%, NASDAQ leading the charge up 1.32% in that respect. So looks as though it's still a green side for the tech stocks there. We'll look into some of the stock movements that have been moving there if we get a bit of time. But on the local front, the resources sector seemingly showing some signs of life and rebounding from the negativity we saw at the start of the week. It was up 1.8% in trade today, while financials was down 1.9%, so that kind of negated that. And industrials were up 1/3%, but the all share finished flat, the top 40 finished flat, and it doesn't look like it was a good day there. If we look at some of the counters that had significant movements throughout the day, the likes of Copper 360 were down today. The likes of Teresa were up, and I'll give you those figures in a second. I'm just looking to refresh them and give you the latest data from there. Copper 360 down about 6% today. The team at Equites was down 4% as well. Brait was down 4%. They're obviously going through that recapitalization exercise that one of their big shareholders, Dr. Christo Visa, has said he will back. The team at Octodec was down about 4.1% in today's trade as well. And transaction capital down 3.3%. First Rand also 3.3% in the red. All the banks, as I said, had a negative day. And if you look at just the rest of them, Discovery 3%, Nedbank 3% as well. And on the retail side, Mr. Price also down 3%. There were some guys, as I said, that had a good day, and Vukile was one of them. It was up 4%. Emira Property Fund, another REIT on our JSE, up 5.2%. So some of the property guys seemingly having a better day, and the others not so much. If we have a quick look at the performance of our currency, the Rand not holding its ground any longer, losing 1.3%. It's sitting at 18 Rand 94 against the dollar, sitting at 24 Rand and 20 against the British pound, down 1.3%. There as well, and 20 Rand and 59 cents against the euro, down 1.2%. Not a good day for the Rand at all. There might be something to do with the coalition talks, might be some other movements. We'll keep an eye there and see what's happening. Quick look at some of the commodities. Gold up 1.2%. $2,355 an ounce. Brent crude still below $80 at $77.24 a barrel. And the price of platinum is back above $1,000 at $1,002.55, while palladium is at $941, up about 3% on the day. We're going to look into these and other stories a little later on. Ashraf, for now, back to you and the team, and we'll catch up with the listeners a little later.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that, Jimmy Wright. Listen out for that show, 6 to 7, as Jimmy talks business on the MoneyWeb markets coming up from there. Right. Okay. We're going to talk to the SACP. They have had a press conference earlier on. They've pronounced on their thoughts in terms of the coalition. So we'll get to that in a moment or two. In the meantime, the oft-repeated question, what drives the national pulse on the show? And people have different views about it. It certainly has been the big issues we know. Here's one.
Hi, Ashraf. I am listening and cooking. I just came home now in Durban, in Merebank.
Okay, nice. You didn't give me your name, but you're listening and you're cooking. Tell you what, the country's cooking at the moment as well. In the light of what's happened with our elections, things are cooking. The national pulse is boiling. Thanks for that. Give us your name next time. Love to know that, right? Right, here's another one. Again on the ANC.
Khalishu Hausela from Mogopan. I'm shocked as to the length at which the ANC is willing to go. Giving IFP premiership and 4 MECs in order to retain the KZN and block MK. I wish the opposition could do the same against ANC at national level. Take all the ministries, take the presidency, and take out the whole of ANC out. Thank you very much.
Well, at the moment, my understanding is that the MK party needs, 5% to be able to govern KZN. So one thing is the ANC trying to make chommies with other people, but if the MK can make chommies with one or two smaller parties, IFP in particular, they'll be in business. Of course, on the other hand, what complicates it is the IFP may be part of a greater coalition or government of national unity that includes them, that gives them some sense of power as well. And then, as you have heard already, that at this point in time, MK are literally not taking calls from the ANC. It's a case of, please call me, and they are not replying at all. Okay, we're going to chat to the SACP about their views pretty shortly, coming up imminently. So listen out for that. Let's get to further calls. We go to Bloemfontein again. I like the fact that we've had people from different cities, different towns, big and small, around the country. You truly are a reflection of South Africa and the national pulse. Chaka in Bloem, hi.
Hello.
Yeah,
Ashraf.
yeah, good talking to you. Go ahead. What's your point?
Yes, Ashraf, I wish you could ask everyone who phones there whether he has voted or not, because it looks like it's a problem with the voters. The voters have just put us on this difficulty. I think the latest information I have is like 50% of people haven't voted. And now they will come and talk all sort of other things from in your show and so on.
Yeah.
But
are you suggesting that the people who didn't vote don't have a right to express themselves?
No. They have a right. They have a right to express themselves. But somehow they limited their right. In a sense of coming after the event and then trying to offer solutions. The whole issue now is that the ruling party has got no option. They really have very little options. And then the people who come and say, they cannot go into alliance with this party or not this party, because their options are very limited, very, very limited.
Well, I think you're right. When you lose leverage, then your leverage is far less than what you were, a month ago, isn't it? That's the reality. Chaka? I think we have just lost.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm saying, the ANC as the ruling party has lost its leverage. They're not as powerful as they were a week ago.
Yeah.
It's true, yeah.
And, if a party is voted in the parliament, they must exercise the privileges they've been given. To govern is a privilege, and it's something that they have to take it very seriously. They've lost it. I think the ANC have lost it. They really mess up, and they have to themselves to blame. Not to really go out and now we must now sympathize and say, well, they cannot do it. They cannot into alliance with the or even the DA when they don't have much choice. you know.
Okay,
They-
let's
they
leave it at that.
believe-
Chaka,
they believe their
we're gonna move on. Chaka,
And
you've
if
made
they
your
vote for themselves,
Chaka, you
yes,
made your
really-
point. Thank you for that. You've made your point. Much appreciated. Let's move on. But I mean, here's the thing. Before we get to Teboho, here's the thing, and I've said it. Please listen to my opening. What I call "That's My Point" when I start the show every day at 3:00. We've got it up as a podcast as well as video, right? I mean, I have made the point that yes, we know the problem has started because the ANC has got less than 50%. If they didn't get less than 50, there'd be no discussion today about anything around this issue. It's about more who's going to be the cabinet, right? So we know that part, right? But the second part of it is that the different parties, and I understand they're jockeying for positions, right? But if you listen to the narrative, and I've said so today, it still doesn't sound like they're putting South Africa first. They're putting South Africa second, and they're putting their own parties first. And I'm not talking of one party. I'm talking as a general observation. And I really want to see parties understand that ultimately, even before the election and now, it should always be about the people of the country, and everything must be centered to the people. Teboho, let's get your thoughts. Hi.
Yes, Ashraf, how are you?
Yeah, good. You're putting Kuruman on the map. Thank you for that. Go ahead.
Yes, Ashraf. I'm just concerned about this obsession with the DA.
Yeah.
I don't know where all of a sudden it is coming from. The DA called the ANC a corrupt party. The ANC called the DA a racist party. The DA is a sympathizer of the Rothschild Zionist Jews. The ANC is anti-that. And all other things, there is no coalition between the two. They will never agree on and I'm sorry to say this. This is not unlike what many people are saying in the interest of the country. That is only in the interest of the DA.
Well, you see,
DA,
let me answer the first part. I mean, to give you the reason people are talking about the DA is because the DA is the second strongest party in the country. That's a fact now. It's not a maybe. It's a fact, right? And number one. Number two. Yeah, but number two, the ANC and the MK, and the MK is part of the ANC, if you know it historically, right? They're not talking to each other at the moment. So who does the ANC talk to be able to get over the line of 50 plus 1? But you can answer in 30 seconds. We do need to move on tomorrow. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I was coming to that. I was listening to what Ashraf Garda said this morning, that the people have given the ANC and the DA a mandate. That's a lie. That's a lie. Because that is a disrespect to the other parties. The third party, the fourth party, the fifth party, the sixth party, and so on. It's a total disrespect. And I'm not surprised because these people are the beneficiaries of the free shares of the business community. Your Ashraf Garda and all others.
Okay.
That's why today, last year, Cheryl was against a DA. But today, all of a sudden, she is now appeasing the DA.
Okay, we're going to move on. I'm not too sure whether she's for the PA. She's saying they must do a deal because they effectively been given a mandate as the two top parties to be able to reach some solution in the country. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but in fact, Paul, thanks for that. You know, many people within the ANC, and she's part of the ANC, do not agree with her, and many people in the SACP do not agree with her, and Kosanto as well. We'll talk about the SACP's position in a moment. Listen out for it.
Hi, I'm Khomotso KG Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons right here on SAFM, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide with me, KG Mweketi.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Do not forget, we've got podcasts set up of just about all the major interviews we've done today, as we do every single day. Go to safm.co.za. Right, let's talk about the SACP position regarding the elections, regarding their views on, Zizi Kodwa. They've spoken about him, but certainly around coalitions or whatever else the solution may be, right? My guest is Madala Masuku, who's the SACP's first Deputy General Secretary. Madala, good chatting to you. You're live on the National Pulse.
Hi. Greetings to you, Ashraf, and the listener.
Thank you. What's your pulse rate right now? Because, your coalition has not done well in this election. Your tripartite alliance, let's put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, Ashraf, yes, indeed, we've been campaigning collectively for the victory of the ANC, and the results are out, and the ANC still come out as a majority party, and want to thank all the those that have voted for.
But wait, the ANC hasn't come out as a majority party. Majority means 50 plus 1. They don't have that.
No, it has come out as still the biggest party.
Okay, but I'm just clarifying it. It's an important point, but I'm just clarifying it. They're the largest party by numbers, but 6 out of 10 people voted against the ANCs. They're not the majority party any longer.
Yes, that's why I was saying that, yes, it has come out as a setback, but it doesn't take away that the fact that there are voters that actually had confidence into the ANC, and even up to now nationally, we know that.
All right, what's your thoughts about the ANC's performance overall?
The ANC's performance has been measured by the feelings of the voters, and we'll take that. And we've been that's why we're going to be reflecting a lot around that at a later stage. Although on Monday the officials have met on the party and reflected on how to assist the ANC in terms of the formation of a coalition. And today we're having a PB to finalize that. But we are going to be reflecting on that to be able to pick up what it is that were the issues that the voters were actually speaking to us.
Okay. What's your thoughts regarding, because the ANC, your party, effectively did not get its 50%, you need to strike a deal somewhere, right? What is the SACP's position in terms of forming a government?
Our view is that the people have spoken and given a guidance in terms of what's supposed to happen, and we're supporting the process that the ANC has embarking upon to talk to everyone with an intention to facilitate the speedy resolution that will allow the establishment of a government as a matter of urgency, and we are supporting that. But we do have views, as you know, we're a communist party, and we have said in our 15th Congress that we are neither for state capture against us or for neoliberal forces, and for that, on those bases, we are not. We're not comfortable with any. Will not be comfortable with any arrangement that allow for the DA that represent that neoliberal trajectory that we think that in the 30 years has caused us all this problem.
Okay, so I'm going to push you. I'm going to push you for time. Yeah.
And at the same time, on the other hand, where we are saying that it will be making sense for us to support a coalition that will include the MKP on the basis of that they are a product of factionalists in the ANC, and also most of them have been in the driving force in terms of the state.
Okay, so to get clarity, you've ruled out, according to an SACP position, a deal with the DA, and you've also ruled out a deal with the MK party, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So any other arrangement?
Right. Would you support a coalition then, which just leaves, let's say, the ANC with only one major party, which is 10%, just under 10%? When I'm talking of the EFF, right? Would you support them?
Yeah, we wouldn't have a problem with those, because in our view is that voters have rejected rejected both the neoliberal agenda and put more votes into those who are actually supporting the working class programs, those that have been campaigning on that ticket.
Would you now the ANC National Working Committee are talking about not a coalition but a government of national unity, which would include the MK party and include the DA in a different sort of arrangement. What's your position on that?
So our position says that you can get that GNU and get as inclusive as possible for us, the two are MKP and the DA.
Okay, so if the ANC chooses to go with the DA or the MK party, I know MK is not returning calls at the moment. Assuming they choose to go with them, what would the SACP do then with regard to your relationship with the ANC?
We are an independent organization in the ANC. It is an independent organization, and you remember that when we spoke about entering the election, we spoke about entering it from a reconfigured alliance, and the processes should actually be able to define our stand. So we will be able to reflect on that when we arrive at that.
Okay. Just two things before I let you go. You do accept the fact that the ANC has lost a lot of its leverage. That means they've got less leverage to make calls to form government than they had before because of that 40%. So when, on the one hand, you may discount MK as well as DA, but the ANC may not have a choice.
Yes, yes, we know that the ANC has allowed its majority, but we believe that even the other parties, the arrangement now by the outcome is actually giving us a leverage to have a different permutation that the ANC can engage with, and actually the other parties can actually make that call and interact with the ANC with an intention. Anything that gives us stability, anything that gives us a program that is pro-poor, anything that gives us a program that is focused to the people is actually what we are looking for than positions.
Okay, last one. Just to wrap up in 30 seconds, your thoughts on Zizi Kodwa resigning?
Well, it has actually come in at a time when we were in a meeting. We didn't reflect on that much. But all we can say is that we have seen that there was a suggestion that he's going to be called to, there's a possibility of him being charged on the ground of corruption. And at the moment we can only say that if it's related to that, would welcome that and then allow Comrade Zizi to go and clear himself on that. Okay. Remembering that we are also the first proponent of the state capture program that was to look at the issues of corruption and state capture.
Points noted. That's where we can leave it. Madala Masuku, appreciate your time. SACP's first Deputy General Secretary. Lots to come out of that conversation. We're going to end the show now, so you can't call in, but you can certainly tweet out your thoughts as well as take us on the SAFM platform on Facebook or Twitter, whichever one you choose. It's 6 p.m. It's time for the news now with Greg.
Thank you, Ashraf. In this news update, SACP speaks out against a coalition with the DA and Sibanye mine workers end their sit-in. Good evening to you.